WWF versus WCW versus ECW. The year of 1997, one of the most important years of wrestling, one of the most explosive, volatile. There's some of the best stuff that's ever happened. There's some of the worst stuff that's ever happened. 1997, arguably one of the best years in mainstream North American wrestling. And these three companies are leading the charge. However, which company is hardest? Which company gave us the best in-ring, out-of-ring, characters, storylines, the pay-per-view quality? Prince Iaukea, he's pretty shitty. Goldust is doing blackface, also not that great. ECW. So there's a lot to get into, and I think I'm ready for it. Are you, pal? Well, too bad. You hit play, you're here, and you're going to stay here. Don't you switch off. You're here for the hardest promotion battle finale of 1997. Strap in, folks. It's going to be a big one right here on the Apron Bump Podcast.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Come on now. How is everybody doing? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle. It's been a minute, huh? It's been a little while. It's been a while, folks. Appreciate everyone bearing with me with all the travel and the sickness. I had to get my foreskin reattached. But we're back. We are here for the finale of the hardest promotion battle of 1997. Now you might be walking in cold here. Maybe you've never listened to the Apron Bump, or maybe you have, but you just haven't been abreast to the hardest promotion series that we've done. Well, if that's the case, of course, if you want to go check all of that out, that is all available to you in the archives of the Apron Bump. We'll get a little bit more into that, but what we're going to do today, we'll just lay it out here. I guess I'll just lay out the hardest promotion concept for those unfamiliar. So here on the Apron Bump, we cover chronologically several different timelines in wrestling, promotions big and small, all across the world, across 4 different decades. Lots of variety here, lots of different flavors and styles and colors of wrestling. We get into it all, not just kind of in a vacuum here, but we immerse ourselves in different timelines of wrestling. One of those timelines is the mid-90s, the wrestling wars of the 90s, I guess approaching the late 90s at this point. But the major companies running the show, WWF, WCW, and ECW, at least in North America, just for those who are gonna chirp at me. Yes, there's Japan, there's Mexico, there's Saskatchewan. I know there's wrestling in other places, but globally, the main guys are those 3 promotions. And often you see debates online, which company, ECW was the best. Oh, they kind of established all of these things that the other companies just stole. And then people will also be like, well, no, WCW, they brought in the NWO, which is something that shook up wrestling, that maybe saved wrestling and made wrestling cool again for the first time in a very long time. But then WWF is the only company still standing. So, I mean, they have their claim to be the best. And now, obviously, as time goes on, some companies might be better this year than that year. Some might be very good here, and a lot maybe, like a WCW, they're peaking here, and then it kind of is on the downturn. WWF is kind of on an opposite trajectory. ECW is a little bit more of a mystery to me. That's kind of why we're living through it. But all that to say, we go year by year on the Apron Bump. So here we are zoning in on the year of 1997, as that is the year we just completed in the Wrestling Wars of the 90s timeline. And if you want to check each of these episodes out, there will be a link in the description That brings you to apronbump.com. That allows you to filter through this timeline, and then you can select any show that I've reviewed, and you could select the app you want to listen to it on or watch it on. But it's been a fun old time, so I strongly suggest if you're not caught up, go ahead and catch up. It's a good old time there. But that's where you can find that. But before we get to the scoreboard here, before we get to truly locking in the hardest promotion of 1997, we'll get into all of it, the scoring, how we got there, what we're going to do, what's going to change. We're going to get into it. But a lot of you might be coming in cold. You might need a little refresher on the year of 1997. So let's talk about it. We'll just do briefly here. We'll talk about some of the good and some of the bad from each company, because there was a lot of good and there was a lot of bad. And that's the thing about 1997. Like, it's companies are just trying shit, man. Like, that we're at war with each other. We're seeing wrestlers hop from company to company. We're seeing, and this is what we've seen and what we've talked about as we've kind of slowly gone through this timeline. I mean, we're watching companies just steal from each other, like literally steal wrestlers, but also just steal concepts. Like DX, for example. Like, I can't believe that it's even a question. I've seen it over the years. It's like, which faction was better? NWO or D-Generation X? Which, are you fucking me in my ass? Like, what are we talking about? It's not even a question, especially in 1997, dude. By the way, NWO is better, in case that's not clear. DX was literally, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to segment this by company, but that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that companies will steal concepts, will steal just like vibes. I think both WCW and WWF have just ripped ECW. They've just taken all of its parts. Oh, hey, Too Cold Scorpio, thanks. Oh, here's Eddie Guerrero. Let me yoink. Oh, breaking fourth walls and promos. Yep, thanks, Taz. Let me take that. Like, it's been fascinating to watch in real time. But let's go company by company here. Let's talk about it. Let's step back. Let's take a breath. Let's start with WWF. Why are we starting with WWF? Well, take a look behind me. And I haven't even talked about that. How have I not brought that up yet? I'm just all over the place here. The hardest promotion battle. We pit each company against each other. You might be asking, what are the stakes? Hardest part of the ring. Is it just for bragging rights? No. We're having fun talking about this. We're having a good time, just reminiscing and kind of debating which company was the best. It's all good fun, but this is not for fun. This is for a prize. This is for more than you could have ever imagined, because whichever company walks out of the hardest promotion battle with the most points earns themselves a purchase from yours truly. I will purchase a championship belt of that respective company from this timeline. So any belt that was utilized in 1997, I could end up purchasing. If WWF wins, which, by the way, let me just hold on one second. Let me just pull this bad. Oh fuck! Let me just pull this bad boy out. The WWF, old Dusty, the WWF Intercontinental Championship is on my mantle behind me, or is now on my shoulder. You hear that? The reason I have this belt is because in 1996, WWF was the hardest promotion, and they earned themselves a purchase from the hardest part of the ring of the best looking belt from 1996, the Intercontinental Championship belt. Now, I would have preferred a white strap, but this one was cheaper, so I got it. But it's still a beautiful belt, and I will be adding another belt to my mantle as a result of this hardest promotion battle. Now, WWF wins again. If they do, maybe I'll add a little winged eagle to the mantle behind me. If ECW wins, might find me the TV title, put it up there. If WCW wins, you bet your bottom dollar I'm seeking out that women's cruiserweight championship. That is going on my wall. that might not ever leave my waist, if I'm being honest. So a lot at stake here is what I'm trying to say here. In this quick little recap of 1997 that we're going to do before we get to the nitty gritty of it, we're going to start with WWF as they are the reigning hardest promotion champion. Now, 1997 WWF, what comes to mind? Just let me, I say that, what comes to mind to you? Is it Flash Funk? Is it The Patriot? Is it Scott Putski? Probably not. Probably none of those things. You're probably thinking of Stone Cold Steve Austin. You're probably thinking of Bret Hart. One of those two is probably, I would guess, what you are thinking of. And very appropriately, because those are the two gentlemen that, in my opinion, have carried the company on their backs in 1997. More so Stone Cold, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, and I say that, and I think that's a testament to the year of 1997. I feel like for WWF, it was a very top-heavy year. You had a great main event scene. That's really the Attitude Era in a nutshell. It's like great shit at the top, and then we'll fill in the rest. We'll just throw in stuff there, whatever. Here's the Rockabilly. Here's Scott Taylor. Here's Brian Christopher. Whatever. We'll figure it out. But the top of the top was red hot, man. This is the year that Stone Cold Steve Austin broke out. A lot of people think he wins King of the Ring 1996 and he's just off to the races. It's not the case. Not the case. Still bullshitting with Savio Vega 96. He's on the pre-show versus Yokozuna. He's kind of just he's building some stuff. You know, he builds to a really good match at Survivor Series with Bret Hart in 1996. Like he's getting going, but he takes off in 1997. I think in terms of like start to finish, I think this is probably Steve Austin's best year in terms of where he started in January and where he was at in December. Like, of course, 1998, he wins the title, and then we're off to, you know, him and Vince do their shit. Huge in its own right. But I think 1997, there's a big argument that it is Steve's, you know, the most progress in his career that he ever made within the course of one calendar year. It's just the stuff. I mean, he was doing stuff like, I mean, he obviously started out as a heel. We had the whole Royal Rumble debacle where he was eliminated, and then he was eliminated, and then he came back, and then quote unquote won the Royal Rumble, and then all of that controversy gave us the Final Four, which was a really great match in February, I believe it was. And then WrestleMania, of course, we have Steve Austin versus Bret Hart, which was an iconic match, and that leads us into a full summer and beyond of Bret and the Hart Foundation, that whole group forming and cultivating itself. And then Steve Austin is the foil for Bret. You got a little Stone Cold Shawn Michaels action in between. You got some Stone Cold Undertaker stuff. Their one good match, the one good Steve Austin Undertaker match happened this year. So Stone Cold, I mean, he's leading the charge for 1997 WWF. And it is just, again, maybe the most important year for WWF is 1997. Obviously, it wouldn't be until 1998 where they kind of turned the tides against WCW and started winning the ratings war. But 1997, I think it's a major theme here. 1997 planted those seeds, and those seeds would blossom in 1998 in a big way, but you can't have a blossom without a seed plant. That's what I always say. So huge year for WWF in that respect. I mean, business wasn't maybe as good as a lot of people think it was, but in comparison to 95, 96, new generation, I mean, you can feel it. You can feel the energy change. You can feel the crowd getting more into the product. You can feel that the signs are increasing. The noise levels, the decibels are increasing. People are more engaged with what's happening. You can feel the tide turning for WWF. So the good, kind of babbling here. We'll go through this quick. The good of WWF. What was the good? Obviously, Steve Austin, like we just talked about. Even post neck break, Steve Austin was arguably even better from a character perspective because they had to get very creative in how to utilize Steve because he was he was pulling the cattle. He was pulling the cart, whatever the saying is. And even though he had a shattered neck, he was still on TV, stunning people, driving cars into the ring and all that stuff. Steve Austin was just he was the best part of WWF in 1997. The anti-authority stuff that he was starting to bring into the equation, it was so just in line with society, that grunge type of pop culture of the late 90s. Like he just perfectly slotted in to what fans were seeking. It was just perfect. And the double turn at WrestleMania with Bret was phenomenal. The match was phenomenal. We talked about it in great detail on that episode, and just the aftermath of it was equally as good. But it wasn't just Steve Austin. Contrary to how I might make it seem, you got the rise of lots of different guys. How about The Rock? Ever heard of him? Tough start to the year, right? He started as Rocky Maivia. He won the Intercontinental Championship pretty quick in this year, but still wasn't really getting the response that maybe he sought from the crowd. He was pretty bland. Like, he was a good-looking guy, solid wrestler, but he had a little too much new generation tinge on him, I think. I don't think. And you got like the nepotism angle too. It's like, oh, this guy's just here because he's Rocky Johnson's son. Like, the crowd wasn't responding to The Rock, but man, the pivot, the pivot they made with Rocky Maivia. I mean, night and day, just right away, dude. You can tell watching the Raws and all his promos, like, The Rock was that dude. He was the guy. You could tell it from day one. Once he turned and joined the nation, that he was going to be a major star. Maybe hindsight is highlighting that for me, but even those early days of The Rock, you can tell he was going to be the dude. And then his stuff with Stone Cold at the end of the year, great stuff. The inter-nation turmoil with him and Farouk is just kind of starting here, but great stuff from The Rock. Also, a sneaky good year for The Undertaker as well. His match with Sid at WrestleMania was not good, but man, he was involved in a lot of good stuff this year. He was in that Final Four match. He had, again, I brought up that match he had with Stone Cold at In Your House, Cold Day in Hell, I believe it was. Great match. Like, once Taker won that title, he had a sneaky good title reign with Steve. He had matches with Steve Austin, with Bret Hart. His match with Bret Hart at SummerSlam was very good. I mean, the Hell in a Cell with Shawn. Are you kidding me, dude? The other matches he had with Shawn were very good too. The match with Mankind, that whole thing continuing. And of course, the whole saga with Kane getting underway this year. So a very good year for The Undertaker as well. So a lot of good stuff from old Mean Mark Callis this year. Bret Hart brought him up earlier, the Hart Foundation, bringing everybody together. There was some turmoil between Bulldog and Owen, but then Bret stands in. He's like, no, you guys are family. I need you guys to make up because I need some backup. So he brings them in. Jim Neidhart's there. He brings Pillman into the fold. You have the whole Canadian Stampede match, which is a contender for match of the year, I would say. I wouldn't say it is, but there's an argument in terms of just pure environment. And just a really unique concept of him being a heel in America, but a babyface everywhere else. Like, it was just really good stuff, really groundbreaking, cutting edge stuff from Bret over the course of this year. And then it leads to the screw job, which we'll talk about. But a good year in WWF for Bret Hart. I gotta specify that. DX also, you can argue if that's a good or a bad thing. I have it as a good of 1997. You have DX coming in. It's established. It's a kind of a rocky start here. It's just Shawn, Triple H, and China, and then they bring Rick Rude into the equation briefly, and then he goes to WCW. Then it's just the three of them again. I think this is maybe the weakest version of DX. I don't think DX really hits their stride until Shawn leaves and they bring the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac into the equation. Personally, that's how I feel. But there is some good stuff with DX. I mean, it's continuing to usher in that Attitude Era tone. And a lot of it in hindsight doesn't really age particularly well. It's just kind of like, when I say it doesn't age well, I don't mean like, oh, it's offensive. No, I mean, it's just like dumb, like not funny. Like, it's just like, I don't know. But at the time, like it was hitting, people were into it. They pushed boundaries with some edgy stuff, with some, they're playing poker in the middle of the ring and Sean's got his big fat cock out. China's there. They're all showing their asses. I do think I mentioned this earlier, how like, I mean, it's so clear that like Sean and Triple H, they just saw their buddies on the other channel. They saw Scott Hall and Kevin Nash having fun with the NWO. So it's so clear that like Sean and Triple H were like, hey, let's just do that. Let's just do that, but green. So and that's the thing. Like when I'm watching all this stuff chronologically, it's so clear that's what happens. They even do the thing. I think they even do spray paint at some point. They do. I don't know if you guys remember this. I think I brought it up whatever episode it was, but you know how NWO does the spray paint gimmick? They spray paint NWO on their enemies when they beat them up. DX tried this thing when it was four of them. It was Shawn, Triple H, China, Rick Rude. They would beat up somebody, put them in the middle of the ring, and then all four DX members would have a roll of toilet paper in their hands. They would each go to a corner of the ring, and then they would throw that roll of toilet paper across the ring, giving an overhead shot of an X over who was ever in the middle of the ring. Which, fine, they're trying stuff, but it's like, oh, we can't do spray paint. What are we gonna do? Like they were just leaning on NWO a little too heavy-handedly, I would say, but they would eventually figure it out. But 1997, all that stuff gets on the up and up. I mean, again, a sneaky good year for Triple H as well. First of all, they're starting to call him Triple H, which is big. He's getting away from that Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the blue blood shit. He's just being a guy. He's being the guy that we would all grow to know and hate, love, whatever you do. But I mean, Triple H, his matches with Mankind, the steel cage he had with Mankind at SummerSlam, I believe it was. The street fight he had with Cactus, was it Cactus Jack at that point? I don't remember. On Raw, like there was a couple match of the year contenders from old Paul Levesque. Sneaky good year in 1997, and then him and Shawn Michaels, of course. Shawn is Shawn. So both individually and as a unit, I think those two guys brought a lot of good to WWF in 1997. And those are the main bullet points here. Ultimately, the overarching thing is that they're starting to push the boundaries. The Attitude Era, I guess, officially has started. It's arguable when it officially started. I feel like once they bring the Titantron into the equation, we're kind of there. But yeah, we're there, pal. We're there. By the end of 1997, we're definitely there. So, I mean, it's not just the things I've mentioned. I mean, you got the whole Brian Pillman Goldust feud. You have Mark Marrow turning heel and being abusive towards Sable. You got all the stuff Goldust does at the tail end of the year. Vader. You got the humanization of a lot of guys, the more kind of reality-based stuff with like Undertaker, with Mankind, with Goldust, like these kind of Looney Tunes characters from the new generation. We're starting to bring them down to earth a little bit and kind of look at them as human beings here, which is arguable if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a big tone shift for WWF. And in terms of the product, just watching it, I feel like it's been a huge improvement. So the bad from WWF, we'll go through this a little quicker. The Montreal screw job. I mean, take a listen to my Survivor Series 1997 episode, but I mean, there's a lot of good and bad that came out of it, but it was definitely a tough look for the time for the company. But I think ultimately over time, it ended up being more of a pro than a con. But in 1997, it was a pretty tough look. And I mentioned this earlier, just a very top-heavy company. Like, of course, your Steve Austins, your Undertakers, your Bret Harts, your Shawn Michaels is doing great stuff at the top. But then you just got the Sultan, Rockabilly, Jesse James, the Patriot, the light heavyweights. There's some good in there, but the majority was just like, Scott Putski versus Scotty Too Hottie. Like, is more bad than good from them. Gang warfare fucking sucked. It was like from beginning to end of 1997. It just never went away. Nation, Bariquas, DOA is just like enough. You got the Truth Commission in there a little bit. It was just boring and stupid the whole way through. There's no connection to the individual wrestlers. Nobody gives. I mean, I guess people like DOA, whatever, the big bikes. People like loud noises, but it just never got over. And it was just so present throughout the entire year to a frustrating extent. Like, enough. And it continues in 1998. Gee Willikers, man. The tag team division, of course, WWF has never really had a good tag team division. You get little bubbles of good stuff every once in a while, but not terrible year, I guess, for the tag team division. I would honestly say more of like it was understated, but also underrated, maybe. Like the Headbangers, the Godwins, LOD, the Blackjacks, and then you got the New Age Outlaws towards the end of the year. Towards the end of the year, there's some pretty good stuff with the New Age Outlaws and stuff. But yeah, just a pretty underwhelming, just middle and lower card for WWF during the entire year. And that's WCW has done a better job at having a more well-rounded from top to bottom good product. Whereas WWF, they kind of, what's doing the best in the main event? What's moving merch? All right, that's cool. All right, the rest of this 2 hours, we'll just fill in with bullshit. So just not a very complete year for WWF, I feel like, and they're still losing in the ratings war, which we're not going to take that into too much of an account, but just worth noting that WCW is still, I mean, from a metric standpoint, the more captivating product, but that will soon change. That will soon change. But that's WWF. Let's talk a little bit about WCW, huh? WCW 1997. What do you think of when I say WCW 1997? Yeah? Me too. Yeah, we all think about High Voltage. Now, I don't even know if they're still there, honestly. But no, 1997, I mean, I would say almost inarguably the hottest year of their existence. Is that crazy? 98? I mean, 98's a pretty big year, I think, too. But, I mean, Sting, dude. Sting. The Sting versus NWO storyline. I mean, what else can I say that hasn't already been said by a million people? Even though, like, me watching in hindsight, I have this weird, like, disconnect with Sting. Like, I don't totally get it. But when I watch the show and I see how amped everybody gets for Sting, like, that carries over through the screen to me. So I get into it as well. But, no, just the Sting, and it was just such a unique approach to it, with him not wrestling the entire year until Starrcade, which was the very the last few days of 1997. But him being kind of ever present, him sometimes showing up but not showing up. It feels like they kind of had a good balance of him being there and not being there, to the extent of, like, when he did show up, it was a big deal. So in terms of the good for WCW, I mean, that was the top of the top. Sting and NWO. I mean, NWO as a general deserves its own bullet point, I would say. Like, it was cool, dude. Like, I'm not breaking any new ground, but as somebody, look, I never watched WCW as a kid. So this isn't like nostalgia goggles. Like, I'm watching this for the first time, and I'm telling you, NWO was pretty fucking cool at the time for a little bit. Yes, in 1997, it's starting to become oversaturated. It's starting to become there's just too many people. We'll just say that. But is it though? I don't know. I don't even know if they're there yet. I think they're approaching that level. But I think there's a lot more bad, or a lot more good than bad, from the NWO. I mean, Sold Out. We started this year with Sold Out, which was not a good note for WCW. I would say maybe one of the worst pay-per-views of the year. But it was cutting edge. It was trying something different, and I can appreciate that. Obviously, I mean, the leaders, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan. But then you have like the sub characters that are starting to develop, like Buff Bagwell is a highlight of the NWO, in my opinion, from a character perspective. You got Mr. Perfect coming in, you got fucking Scott Norton, you got Virgil. Like, it's a cast of characters, but it's good stuff. Macho Man, of course. But ultimately a lot of good stuff from the NWO. And we talked about Sting already. The build towards Sting and Hogan at Starrcade was almost perfect. Almost perfect until Starrcade. But the build was great, let me tell you. The journey, as a great philosopher once said, there's always going to be another mountain. You're always going to want to make it move. Always going to be an uphill battle. Sometimes you have to lose. It doesn't matter how fast you get there. It doesn't matter what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. And the climb towards Sting and Hogan was sensational. Now, sure, we climbed, we got to the top of the mountain, and then we just plummeted to our death. Sure. But that climb was pretty fun, huh? So that deserves being said. And I mentioned this before, just the depth of the roster, the breadth of the roster was unmatched with WCW. You have the cruiserweights, you have your rising stars and your DDPs, your Benoits, your Mongos, you have the Glacier and Mortis stuff, which there's a lot of good stuff there, and with Wrath and the Cat. Like, there's some good stuff there as well. You got your guys on top. You got your Hogans, your Stings, your Ric Flairs, Macho Mans, your Lex Lugers, your Giants, like star-studded main event scene with some good stuff there. Dennis Rodman came in, did some good stuff. Kevin Green, you have your football players, your celebrities. They did it well in 1997. And of course, it's all, I would say, rooted. That the foundation of WCW almost is the cruiserweights. A consistent bright spot on the show. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Juventud, Psychosis, Super Calo. I mean, who else? Hector Garza. I mean, this was the year we got that famous Halloween Havoc match between Eddie and Rey. There's just, and it's not just that big match. You turn on a Nitro, it's just some random 6-man cruiserweight match, but it's going to tear the house down. So the cruiserweights were maybe the main differentiator, the main, like, thing that WCW has that sets them apart at this point, to the extent that WWF was like, oh, cool, we're going to do that too, but like with white people. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man, but really good stuff there from WCW. Nitro as a TV show was just red hot, but with the good comes the bad. It was not all sunshine and roses for WCW. What's some of the bad things from WCW in 1997? We talked about it a little bit earlier with the NWO becoming a little bit overexposed. I still think there's a lot of juice left in it, but we're starting to see the cracks form a little bit. We also talked about the Starrcade, like the culmination of Sting and Hogan, the fumble of the ball at the 1-yard line, the Bret Hart stuff. I mean, just right out the gate is just so underwhelming and just lacking of any heart, no pun intended. But it is just so deflating when Bret Hart comes in. He comes in with like almost no fanfare. He's like, all right, Bret Hart's here. Just comes out with his hand in his pockets. Like, all right. I mean, those are really like the main negatives. I mean, Sold Out 1997 might deserve its own bullet point here. Kind of, I guess you could say maybe just like a lack of like, I don't know if 1997 is really where we see it super heavy. This like kind of glass ceiling for a lot of guys. You got the monopolization of the main event scene with Hogan, like way too much Roddy Piper this year, dude. God, there was actually, the matches actually were generally decent with the exception of the Halloween Havoc steel cage match. But why is Roddy Piper he's just there all year holding up? It's like we're just wasting time for Hogan until we get to Starrcade, is what it kind of felt like for a little bit. Because A lot of pay-per-view main events are Roddy versus Hogan, but the title's not even on the line. So it's like, what the fuck are we even doing? Why not do DDP versus Hogan? Why not do Lex? I mean, they did do Lex versus Hogan a little bit, but then they kind of came and went. Lex won the title, held it for 6 days, and then see you later. Why not fucking Benoit versus Hogan? Why not Ray versus Hogan? Why not Glacier versus Hogan? I mean, there's just Mongo, Ric Flair even. Throw Ric Flair in there for a second if you want. I know Hogan and Flair isn't like this new concept. You know what I mean? It just felt like there was a bit of a glass ceiling there, like not a lot of room at the main event scene for guys like I mentioned. You could even feel like Raven comes in, which is another, I would say probably more a good than a bad thing. The Flock, I think, was a pretty fun concept. Is kind of it always felt like a break from the NWO-ness of it all. So yeah, but I think it's less prevalent in 1997 than maybe it is in like 98, 99. But there is a bit of a glass ceiling where, you know, guys like Jericho and Benoit and Eddie are just never gonna exceed. So yeah, that's really the good and the bad from WCW. Let's talk about ECW for a second. Then we'll move on to the hardest promotion scoreboard here. ECW, again, it's a company that kind of cultivated a lot of the concepts that WWF and WCW would just steal. I mean, just general tone of the show, the reality-based stuff. Like we're seeing stuff with Shane Douglas and Tommy Dreamer and Raven when he was there this year. The Terry Funks, the Sabu and Taz story. Like it's so rooted in like combat and competition, and there's like personal elements to it. It's very, at the time, very novel. It's just so antithetical to what we've seen in the past years with your Doink the Clowns and your Duke the Dumpsters. It's like where it's just dudes fighting each other, and we got some really captivating characters. We got some great promos, some great moments with a little bit of good wrestling in between. But it's more just ECW is a vibe, right? You can't just like pull up an ECW match in a vacuum and understand. I mean, it's like you gotta just be in it. You gotta get in the weeds. You gotta pour it all over you and let it marinate for a little bit. Just the vibe of ECW, the culture shift that it was spearheading. Again, its influence on the rest of the wrestling world is, you can't say anything more about it. Like it was doing a lot of good stuff. It was very influential. I would not say 1997 was a super strong year. Like it's very strong in a lot of ways. You get the first ever pay-per-view for ECW, barely legal, a solid show, a huge landmark moment for the company. It helped elevate stars like Sabu, like Taz, like Rob Van Dam. And it was ECW's like moment of like, okay, now we're here. Now we're in the mix. I think one major bright spot for 1997 is Rob Van Dam. Also, we should mention, by the way, the ECW invasion of Monday Night Raw. So you have the working relationship between WWF and ECW. You have Paul Heyman on commentary on Raw. You got Tommy Dreamer versus Devon Dudley on Raw. And this carries over. Rob Van Dam cultivates this character of Mr. Monday Night, which was built on the fact that, okay, he's wrestling in ECW, but he's really made for the World Wrestling Federation. He's just here as a stepping stone for his eventual, rocket ship ascension on Monday Night Raw in Stamford. And that just gave Rob so much heat as a character. The whole roster was against him. Then Sabu kind of joins him. And then you have Bill Alfonso joining him. And this whole unit. And Jerry Lawler comes into the equation. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in that kind of pocket of story with RVD and the working relationship with WWF. So there's a lot of good stuff from ECW. Just their exposure in general, just being on, USA or whatever fucking channel Raw was on. Having that type of exposure is a major pro for the company. And ultimately, it's mainly just the influence that ECW had on the industry. That was the major bright spot for the company. The bad. I mean, honestly, not ECW was very stable throughout the year. Maybe not financially, maybe not business wise, but as a viewer, it felt very like it didn't feel like there were huge peaks and valleys. It felt like whenever I turned on an ECW show, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is ECW. Like, the talent raid had already happened. I think, Eddie and Jericho and Benoit, that had already, been long done. Yeah, I mean, honestly, not a lot of cons. I mean, I'm not getting into the financial or whatever the hell, but and they still are kind of, they are the number 3 company in terms of exposure, in terms of reach, of course. But as a product, just the quality of a product, I thought it was solid. It was solid. I don't think there was a lot of standout matches, unfortunately, but there were some standout moments, and arguably that might be more valuable. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. It might have been rambly, but that's kind of just for those unfamiliar, or if you need a refresh on 1997. Because I know me, I get my timelines mixed up. I was like, did that happen that year or that year? I don't know. But that leads us into what we all tuned in to see. We got our grasp on what happened in 1997 with each company, the interrelationships. That we have all our information, and there's only one more thing to do, and that is to hit that jingle, Bartholomew.
WCW, ECW, WWF, who's the hardest promotion? Eric or Vince or Paulie? I think we can agree though. Heck, Myers is the shit.
All righty then. The hardest promotion battle of 1997 finally comes to a conclusion. WWF versus WCW versus ECW. If you're watching on YouTube, you can visually look at the scoreboard here as we kind of look at it, maybe change some things. You can visually kind of look at it and all the point values associated to each criteria. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the points breakout here. But if you're listening on audio, I'll lay it out for you. Each criteria here has a certain amount of points, and the points go to a respective company. So ECW, WCW, WWF. So for example, right now we're tracking Bret Hart versus Steve Austin as the match of the year. That is representative of the company WWF. So Bret and Austin being match of the year gives points to WWF. And the best criterias, match of the year, wrestler of the year, etc., they each give 5 points to that respective company. So Bret versus Steve gives WWF 5 points to their overall score. So that's what has contributed to these overall scores that we have here. There's a worst section that is the same criteria, but the worst, of course. And that gives each respective company -3 points per criteria. We'll talk through it as we walk along here, but that's the general methodology of the scores. And then we have the overall, which is the more encompassing, just like general criteria: best TV, best in-ring, best out of ring, like which company had the best of this, just in general. These are a little bit more beefed up. The best TV gives the company 15 points. Best in-ring and best out of ring gives those respective companies 10 points apiece for each of those criteria. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the scoreboard visually, but hopefully that makes sense for those in audio land. But let's get into it, shall we? To reiterate, we've covered every single show from 1997 from each company, every pay-per-view and every special event in the case of ECW. And after every review that we've do, there's an individual podcast episode for each review for each of these, each of these 32 shows that we've covered over the course of the past year or two. We've watched, we've talked about, we've gotten input from different, podcasters, just fans in general of wrestling. Any guest I've had, we've gotten different perspectives, different experience levels, different ways of looking at things, different fandoms. We've taken this all into account. And after every individual show that we review, we grade it from a scale of 0 to 100. And basically, we take the grades, and each promotion has an average grade based on what grades each individual show got. Now, as you can see here, ECW, just by a slim margin over WCW, has the highest average grade of their pay-per-views / special events. And you might be asking yourself, hardest part of the ring. That's all good and all, but what does that mean? Well, when we flip over to the scoreboard here, this is where we are going to be living here for this episode here. This is the overall scoreboard for the hardest promotion battle of 1997. If you're curious as to what this thing is, it is right here, folks. And we take every angle at it. Every angle you can look at wrestling, from the best, the worst, overall. We're looking at in-ring and out of ring and everything in between. We'll get more into detail as we go along here, but this is the current standings. It's pending. It's not finalized. So as of Starrcade 1997, which was the last show, this is where we left off. And after, by the way, after every 1997 podcast episode, at the end of the episode, we always, not only do we grade that individual show, but we come back to the scoreboard and we take kind of a macro level look at the landscape of wrestling. What is doing the best? What is doing the worst? We get in the weeds here because some people out there, you might find YouTube videos of like, here's the best and the worst of 1997. They do some research on Cage Match and maybe find some highlights and some clips. Nobody gets deeper. Nobody penetrates as deep as the Apron Bump. We talk about every single show, every single match, every single segment. We're watching the TV shows, Nitro, Raw, Hardcore TV. We are immersing. That is the beauty of the Apron Bump. We don't just watch shows in a vacuum and like, oh, I think this was happening. I don't know what. We gather all of the context of the time. We put ourselves in the shoes of whatever timeline it is, this case being 1997, and we take a look at what's doing the best and the worst. And this is what we have come down to as of right now. In the effort of this podcast, the goal of this episode is going to be to finalize which promotion is truly hardest. As you can see here, the score as of right now, WCW is in the lead with 34 points. ECW in second with 17 points. WWF with 7 points. Hardest part of the ring. I got another question. Yes, son? Where do these points come from? Well, I'm glad you asked, random citizen. I'll walk you through it. We'll walk through where we stand here. And over the course of this episode, we will take input from the community. We've had a lot of people send in audio messages, video messages. We got some Twitter messages, some DMs. I've put out my bat signal. Bat signal? Is it bat signal or Batman symbol? I put out my Apron Bump symbol. I've shown it into the sky, and some people have responded to it with their input on these current standings. Now, let me just walk through them, the current standings as they stand as of right now. Best pay-per-views, which we just talked about, was just the average of the grades that we've given every single show. Now, I will say, this is the only one as of right now that is locked in because, look, I could go back and be like, no, I think this show might be worth 2 more points than I gave it. But the beauty of these grades here, right, which I'll go back to them real quick. We grade these shows when they're fresh in the mind, like right after we watch it. How did the show make me feel is ultimately what these grades are derived from. So I think they are as accurate as they possibly could be at this point in time. Therefore, we are going to lock in this first category. It's going to be the first locked in points here, and they go to ECW. They hold on to these 15 points, and these 15 points for ECW are locked in. And how do we lock in a point? Well, of course, it's a stupid question that you would ask. Points are only locked in when you hear this sound. The gong of truth, ladies and gentlemen. Best pay-per-views go to ECW. I guess we'll just fucking green this out, I guess. Yeah, boom. So that is locked in. Everything else is not locked in yet. It is the current standing. I know I've said that like 20 times at this point, but just want to reiterate, we are going to be working through and seeing these may change over the course of the episode due to the input from the community or just our general discussion here. So best TV is the next category. Best TV. So this is the company with, just as it states, just in general, the best TV product. This takes into account the in-ring on it, the storylines, how the shows flow, the energy within the show, the production, everything is all encapsulated. It is all 15 points towards that respective company. Currently, WCW holds on to these 15 points. As of right now, I just think Nitro in 1997 was the best show. It was better than Raw, which is honestly its only competition. I mean, ECW, they have hardcore TV, but it's, and I've said it a lot before in previous episodes, hardcore TV, like they'll have some good stuff. You have some good promos and stuff. And every once in a while, they'll do a unique TV taping, but a lot of times it's just highlights from the pay-per-views and then the big special events. So it's hard to really say that ECW is the best TV show. So it's really been a battle between Raw and Nitro. And as of right now, I just think Nitro, over the course of 1997, has been consistently just an engaging TV show. I mean, you consistently have the cruiserweights there putting in work, giving you at least one really good match per episode. And then there's always threads throughout the show, whether it's with the NWO or with the Horsemen or Glacier. You know what I mean? Like there's always threads throughout WCW Nitro, and that also, in addition to it being live, it just gives it a different energy as well. The promos are good. Like Nitro is just a great product in 1997. It's not perfect, but it's very, very good. Whereas Raw, of course, has its moments, but especially in the beginning of 1997, I mean, a pretty weak show in the first half, I would say. And then as time has gone on, it's starting to improve. We're getting deeper stories with like your Taker and Kane stuff, the Nation stuff. I mean, it's pretty much been carried on the back of Stone Cold Steve Austin for a lot of this year. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have done a lot of good work as well. The Hart Foundation as a whole, as a unit, and a few other gems in between. But I think as a whole, Nitro has been the more cohesively and consistently great show over Raw. So, but again, we're not locking it in yet. We're going to listen to the community, but that's where we stand right now. And where we stand right now with this one, best in-ring product. So this is in-ring across TV, pay-per-views, and all that stuff. The best in-ring product, we are tracking WCW as the winner for that one currently pending. Similar to the TV, I think WCW, I mean, they just have the more well-rounded in-ring presentation. You got your cruiserweight stuff. You got your Hoss fights. You got your main event spectacles. You got the stuff that's like kind of in between, like your DDPs, your Ric Flairs, Benoit, like that kind of caliber of wrestling as well, intertwined with all of that. The tag team wrestling isn't very strong in either company at this point, but I mean, there's some decent stuff there too as well. So WCW just has a well-rounded kind of catalog or like toolbox of wrestling. Like no match really feels the same. And I do like that. Whereas WWF, it's a lot of just like, of course, there was some really great stuff in ring with WWF this year, but it's few and far between, unfortunately. In ECW, they're doing their ECW thing well. I can't sit here and say that they're the best in-ring product. I just can't. So currently we're tracking WCW as the best in-ring. Best out of ring characters, promos, storylines, all of that good shit. Currently we are tracking WCW as the best. We talked about NWO, the Sting story, the kind of mid-level stuff with DDP and Macho Man. You got the Horseman drama with Flair and Mr. Perfect, the cruiserweights. You got, the Ray and Eddie stuff. Like, there were stories all throughout of varying qualities. But you turn on a Nitro, you turn on a pay-per-view, you got different stories weaved in throughout. And I think WCW just did a better job at doing that than WWF. And as I've mentioned before, WWF very top heavy, very good stuff at the top, but very lackluster kind of afterthoughts outside of that for the bulk of the show, to be honest. So, and then ECW gave us some great promos, some great moments, but I think when you factor in just the quality of the characters and the storylines, I think WCW just had a better repertoire of that just across the board, across the entire year. So, but that's just my stance right now. That might change when I hear what the community has had to tell me. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Just kind of reviewing where we stand at this point and what my logic is and why I have it. Match of the year, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin. Kind of speaks for itself. I think in my estimation, it's really between this match and Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc. To me, it's really between those two. You could throw in an Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, Hell in a Cell. Sure. I'd be willing to hear anybody out on that. ECW, to be honest, I wouldn't say there's any ECW matches that are in contention. But that's pretty much where we stand there. Wrestler of the year. And this is going to be pretty... We're going to get a little heated on this one. All right. Because this is one I put out on Twitter. And I got some responses. I got some good responses. I also got some pretty dickhead responses, which we're going to get into. Don't you worry, folks. But as of right now, Wrestler of the Year, Eddie Guerrero. Now, the criteria below it is character. There's a separate category for character / storyline of the year. That's where we focus more on like the character, obviously the character, the storylines involving the characters, all the promos and stuff. That's where we kind of focus in on that. Wrestler of the year, the emphasis is on in-ring. Not 100%. I would say it's like 80% in-ring, 20% other stuff. But the emphasis on this criteria is in-ring. And Eddie Guerrero had a sneakily great year. Everybody talks about Ray and Eddie, as you should. Tremendous match. But let's look at Sold Out 97. A terrible pay-per-view, but the bright spot was Eddie Guerrero versus Six ladder match. And then Eddie's just very consistent through the year. He does deal with a little bit of an injury situation towards the middle. But Eddie versus Jericho was great. Eddie versus Ray, and just the random matches he would have on Nitro. He's just a very consistently great worker. But I'm willing to hear people out because there are other people with a good catalog of matches this year. So I'm willing to hear people out, but that's where we stand here. Character / storyline of the year. We're tracking Stone Cold Steve Austin. Again, I think it speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. There's a lot of other people in contention. A lot of people think Sting could be this. But right now, and just in my cockles, it's Stone Cold. And for me, the differentiator between Stone Cold and Sting is that Stone Cold showed up. Stone Cold had matches. Now, of course, there is value in Sting not having matches, the unknown of it all, the mysteriousness of him. There's value. It's good how they went about it. But when we're talking about character of the year, when we're talking the value that you gave, to me, Steve Austin, just between his matches, the promos. By the way, Sting also didn't have any promos. Steve Austin had promos. He had different segments in addition to his character work. I think all of that whole package weighs heavier than the equally bulbous package that Sting provided. So that's just me. It's between Stone Cold and Sting. You could throw in Taz in the mix. You could throw in RVD. You can throw in, I don't know, a DDP. You can throw in, who else? Undertaker, maybe. Shawn Michaels, DX. You could throw in some other some other people / entities. But right now we're tracking Stone Cold as the best character / storyline. Segment of the year, Jerry Lawler's debut at ECW WrestlePalooza. And I've talked about this. I strongly encourage you go check out this episode reviewing WrestlePalooza. Was a fun time talking about it, but we get into the weeds on Jerry Lawler's, him showing up, lights going out, them coming up, Jerry Lawler appearing. This was not the time that he crushed Dreamer's balls, but this did lead to the story, which would lead to Dreamer's balls being crushed. So, but it's in combination with what we talked about with RVD earlier, the Mr. Monday Night stuff. So it's like Jerry Lawler, RVD, Bill Alfonso, Sabu, like this whole thing. And it kind of expanded off of the Dreamer Raven story, which is another, probably should have more attention from me in terms of like segments or stories of the year. But yeah, Jerry Lawler's appearance at WrestlePalooza was rabid, is what I'll say. It was surreal to see Jerry Lawler in an ECW setting, crown and all. The crowd responded viciously, violently. The segment had so much energy. It was just such good shit. Now there's other contenders. There's Steve Austin stunning Vince. There's all, Sting coming down on a zip line. There's Lex Luger. I was about to say Lex Luger winning the title, but that's not really a segment. That's a match, but you know what I mean, right? And maybe some other people that provided messages will have their input, but that's what I'm tracking at this point as the segment of the year. So that was all the best of the year, and all like the match, wrestler, character, segment. Each winner of these criteria earns 5 points towards that respective company. Now, let's look at the worst. The worst of the year, the same criteria, but the worst. And each of these is -3 points towards that respective company. Worst match of the year. This gives the company -3 points. The worst match of the year, we are currently tracking the tables and ladders match between Sabu and Sandman from ECW November to Remember 1997. I think it's also called the Stairway to Hell ladder match or something, whatever. Terrible match. We recently talked about this on the podcast. Just a bizarre one. But again, check out the November to Remember episode if you'd like to hear more in depth about it, but just a stunt show to a cold crowd is my summary of this. Just no heat. Just killing themselves for no reason. It's basically what it was. It just wasn't cohesive. It didn't make a lot of sense a lot of times. A lot of blown spots. And just the expectations of it. Sabu and Sandman, 2 ECW Mount Rushmore guys stinking up the joint. So pretty tough. And ECW November to Remember also being a big show for them, arguably the biggest of the year. And then they just shit the bed. So worst wrestler of the year. We are tracking Prince Iakea. Looking at 1997, there's not a lot of guys in contention for worst of the year, in my opinion. There are some bad characters and stuff, but there's not a lot of like enduring like guys that stick around and just are bad. You know what I mean? You could argue like Hogan, you could argue Roddy Piper. To me, Prince Iakea is here because while his run wasn't super long, he just offered nothing good. You know what I mean? He won the TV title, which in itself was a pretty fun moment because it was like very unexpected. But then he would proceed to he stunk up the joint with Rey Mysterio. He had a boring match with Rey Mysterio Jr. in 1997, a few months before Rey had one of the best matches, maybe the best match in WCW history with Eddie. Rey had a bad match. The only bad match probably he ever had this year was with Prince Iakea. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So that's mainly why Prince is here and just offers nothing from a character. He comes out, he's a fucking whatever, he's Hawaiian or whatever he is. That sounds bad, but fuck him. And but that's his character. He's like, I think I'm Hawaiian, but that's his character. He didn't really expand on what he is or what his culture is or who he is or what his motivation is. He's just coming out barefoot, having boring matches. Like, fuck that guy. Worst character / storyline of the year. A lot of contention for this. But right now, we are tracking Brian Pillman cucking Goldust. Now, so in case you were unfamiliar and you need a refresh, this is unfortunately right before Brian Pillman passed away, which is tough that he ended on this. But that kind of feeds into why this was so bad, because like Pillman, you know, physically he's dealt with so many injuries and stuff. He's not what he used to be. He's no longer Flying Brian. He comes into WWF. He has a lot to offer from a promo and a character perspective, but then he enters this storyline with Goldust. Now, this is like, there's a lot of this in WWF this year. There's a lot of overshooting in the sense that like we're transitioning from new generation to attitude era. And there's a lot of like it's like too much attitude, you know, this is like it's like overcorrection. And this one, it was just shock value for the sake of shock value. Brian Pillman wants Marlena. Him and Goldust have a match where if Brian Pillman wins, he owns Marlena for 60 days or whatever it is. And Brian Pillman beats Goldust, and then Marlena is just his sex slave for a little bit, pretty much up until Brian's passing. And it's just not good. Not good. And then you kind of pair this with the aftermath of Brian Pillman's passing. Of course, you have the interview with Melanie, which was tough. And then the Goldust arc after this, where he's just blackface Goldust for no reason. All of it was just very bad. It was very, very bad. But that's what I have. Maybe some other people will have other options here, but that's where we stand at this point. And I think the only winner here, the only standing, the only criteria that's been there since day one of 1997, the worst segment of the year from was it the first pay-per-view in 97? Okay, Royal Rumble was before this, but from the first WCW pay-per-view of 1997, Miss NWO, worst segment of the year. It was just there was so much time dedicated towards it. The production was bad. There's no payoff. It was a waste of time. Maybe one of the most fun podcast episodes I've done is Sold Out 97. Me and Just we did like a borderline watch along of this segment. And yeah, we get into it, but it was rough. It was rough. The whole show was rough, but that segment in particular was rough. Now, there's a lot of things in contention for worst segment of the year. I just brought up the Melanie Pillman interview, which there's an argument. I've talked about it, you know, when it happened, when I was comparing that segment to Miss NWO. And I think the Pillman interview, the Melanie interview, it was a bad idea. It was bad. To me, it wasn't as bad as I remembered, though. I think it was if correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Melanie's idea. If not her idea, like she agreed to it, you know what I mean? So, and again, just doing it in the first place is bad taste. And some of the questions asked by Vince were in bad taste. But to me, man, I was watching it. I was like, this is, you know, it's rough, but it's like, it's not as bad as I remember. You know what I mean? And it was relatively short, where Miss NWO was not. So that's where we stand here. And this last little section, which we are going to fill out at the end of this, it may or may not factor into the winner here, but 5 points goes to the company that I'm most excited about going into 1998. Should I just fill that out now? Maybe I should fill that out now. You know what? We'll do that. It's not going to be locked in. It's not going to be locked in. But what am I feeling? What am I most excited about going into 1998? As if I didn't know what was happening. just trying to take into account what has happened, where we're at the end of 1997. What company would I be most excited about going into 1998? Sting's world champion, NWO still around, Bret Hart's in the game. There's some good stuff in WCW. Cruiserweight division still red hot. Raven's Flock is in the mix. Goldberg is starting to cook a little bit. Ric Flair's around. ECW is fine. There's some good stuff like Douglas won the title. The Triple Threat Turmoil, the RVD, Sabu stuff. Taz. There's some good stuff in ECW. WWF, of course, you have Steve Austin. The Steve Austin Nation stuff is underway. Mike Tyson has been announced. The Rock is red hot. Taker and Kane is very intriguing. Mankind / Dude Love / Cactus Jack is something. Which company would I be most excited about? Personally, I'm trying not to be biased because I was a WWF kid growing up. But given what is happening, given what happened at Starrcade, it's between WWF and WCW. I think WWF. I think here's why, right? Here's why. And WWF gets 5 points based on that. Steve Austin, the Nation, Undertaker, Kane. I think we're starting to formulate a more well-rounded batch of stories. The New Age Outlaws too, like from start to finish, when you turn on a Raw to the end of it, it's becoming more and more engaging and entertaining throughout. The match quality's there still, I would say. I think Starrcade put a hit on WCW, I would say. Like they're still good for now, but I think we're starting to be a little downturn a little bit. So that's what I feel, but we'll see. We'll see if the community will change my mind. And with that, I think we will get to the submissions of video and audio and text messages that were sent to me. Now, I will say I've not listened, watched, and I've tried not to read what has been sent to me. I'm going to be reacting live to what you guys are saying. I put a tweet out. I put an Instagram, basically a call to action to the community. I put out this scoreboard that I have as of right now. And basically it was like, hey, anybody got any responses to this? Any rebuttals? Any disagreements? Anything I'm missing? I'd love to hear it. And I got a good amount of responses. And we're going to take a listen to them. We're going to take a listen to them, take a watch to them, and take a feel to them. So let's kick it off here with a gentleman that's been on the journey with me through the year of 1997, has made several appearances. Let's start with my boy Pretty Ritty. Matt Ritter from formerly from the Smack It Raw podcast and currently from the Getting Off podcast. Let's see what Matthew Ritter has to say.
What's up, Thighs for Days? Or I guess, as your listeners know you, Kyle.
Thighs for Days, he says. Appreciate that.
My beard is unruly today, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm looking at the hardest promotion battle, and I do have a rebuttal. I have an issue with the standings.
Uh-oh.
And that is the worst segment character. It goes to Pillman and Goldust for the cuck angle. Listen, it's 2026. We shouldn't be kink shaming in 2026. Even back in 1997, like retroactively kink shaming. We really shouldn't. Like,
I will specify, elaborate. I don't hate cucking, right? I'm not anti-cuck. We are not an anti-cuck household here at the Apron Bump. But just because I like chocolate doesn't mean I like everything that has chocolate in it. You know what I mean? I don't know if that analogy is okay, but continue.
If someone wants to be a cuck, let them be a cuck. It's not for me, but it was for Goldust. Like, whatever the deal. It may not have played great out on TV, but I don't think it's the worst. I think that should exclusively go to WCW. WCW has too many points. As you know, I watched all the way through 1997 WCW for Return to Wrestling, and you did it more recently, but the thing that I remember the most about 1997 WCW was two major issues. Number one, the Dungeon of Doom was still around in 1997, well past its expiration date. I understand it wasn't a major focal point,
okay,
Yeah.
but it was still there. And that is, in my opinion, the worst thing to ever happen to professional wrestling. It was absolute utter garbage. The other issue, and this is a little more pressing, and this is where I think the minus 10 points really should go to instead of Pillman Goldust, is Hulk Hogan. I feel like retroactively people look at the NWO and Hollywood Hulk Hogan and think, oh, he was such a great heel. Hogan was such a great heel. He was not a great heel. If you listen to his promos, if you watch his matches and his feuds and everything, Hogan surrounded himself with a bunch of cool people, and he was the least cool person. And that wasn't part of the...
Sorry. I agree 100% with this. In terms of Hulk Hogan, you listen to his promos, it's a lot of cheese. It's a lot of corniness. But the crowd responds to it. I will say it is putting yourself in the shoes of someone at the time, still kind of fresh off of his heel turn, still kind of dealing with that betrayal of Hulk Hogan, that initial betrayal, I think still is, they're still kind of running off of that. But that being said, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, but that's just my take on it. But continue, Matt. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Character, like back in 1997, that wasn't like this self-aware, I'm not as cool as he's, like, it wasn't a thing. Sure. Hogan thought he was as cool, and watching it back, you see how much of a nerd he was compared to all of the people around him, how awful and cheesy all of his promos were, even as a heel. Everything about Hulk Hogan in 1997 is awful, but he gets a discount because A, oh my God, Hogan turned heel, and B, he was part of the NWO and people love the NWO, and theoretically he's the face of that, but he's like a shitty face. Everything that was bad in WCW, well, not everything that was bad, but the majority of the bad stuff was Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan being the focal point of WCW, that's the point I was getting at, holds more weight than I'd say a Pillman Goldust angle. So weighing Hogan's importance and how awful he was, I think that's where the negative 10 points should go to. Hulk Hogan.
I hear you, Matt. I mean, great points all around. I mean, I really don't disagree with you. I guess I do because I have a different person here. So basically, I have Prince Iaukea currently as the worst wrestler of the year. And it seems like you think Hulk Hogan should be in this slot. Now, I will say for the purpose of this battle, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be WCW either way. But I do kind of want to consider that. So we got Hulk Hogan. To me, I don't think I share the same hatred of Hulk Hogan that you do. It's not even that. It's not really that. I'm watching 1997 Hogan, and I do agree with you. Like I mentioned, he is cheesy. He's a very, like, a lot of what he's doing is very outdated. It's very corny. Even for 1997, it's very corny and cheesy and outdated stuff. I think it's still just such a surreal thing to see him as a heel. And I get it. We're over a year after his heel turn. Like, we shouldn't be in that honeymoon phase anymore. But like the fact that it's Hulk Hogan, the ultimate babyface from the golden era, is leading the charge for this heel faction. I think that still holds a lot of weight. See, here's the thing though. When I'm looking at where I have my standings, Prince Iaukea, to me, what he did was worse, but it was brief. Hulk Hogan's there all year. And I think that should be a factor here. And also Hulk Hogan is at the main event, which should also hold more weight in terms of negative quality. To me, people might disagree. In terms of in-ring, I think Hogan had a pretty solid year. Look, he's not doing anything crazy. He's still doing the Hulk Hogan thing. I've said it before. I almost think Hogan works in-ring better as a heel. Again, a lot of this stuff is very cheesy. It's like, you're gonna get over here, pal. Oh, it winds up the punch and eye pokes, and I get it. To me, it works. Like the stuff with Rodman was great, man. His matches with Roddy Piper early in the year were pretty solid. There are issues with it in terms of titles not being on the line, and then you have the steel cage match, which was pretty rough at Halloween Havoc. But like the Sting match was fine. Does Hulk Hogan belong as worst wrestler of the year? Maybe I should I'll just write it down here. I'll add. I'm writing down a list here of like considerations. No, I'm gonna add it here. I'm gonna add it on the screen. All right. So I'm gonna start like an ongoing list here of like guys to consider for each category. Hulk Hogan, I think, still deserves at least another thought. So once we kind of listen to everybody and take in everybody's input, we'll take another look. But great points by you, Matt. In your beard, by the way, I just want to burrow myself in it and make myself a home in there. So just want to throw that out there as well. Let's move on here to let's just knock out all the bald guys out. let's go to my boy Brundo Fly. Brundo from the Shining Wizards podcast has something to say. Let's see what my boy Brundo has to say. He's got the apron. My man wearing the apron bump apron, the predictions champion. By the way, join the Discord if you want a part of our pay-per-view predictions league. They run about 6 months. You get a point per win you get. And if you win a season, you get yourselves an apron bump apron, which Brundo is adorning here. So shout out to you, Brundo, for that reason and that reason alone. But let's see what you have to say. The file is named Starcade Sucked, which, boy howdy. Can't disagree with you there. What do we got to say, Brundo?
Hey, Kyle. Congratulations on another year of wrestling in the books. 1997 was a hell of a year, but I would say there is one event that we went a little too easy on, and that's WCW Starcade. Hey, Kyle. Congratulations on another year of wrestling in the books. 1997 was a hell of a year, but I would say there is one event that we went a little too easy on, and that's WCW Starcade 1997. This was supposed to be WCW turning the tides in the war against the NWO. And what happened? You have the Steiner brothers, who were the premier tag team of WCW at the time. They lost to a team that had fucking Virgil on it. Then you have Buff Bagwell defeating Lex Luger. Lex Luger, who was champion in 1997. Lex Luger, who defeated Hulk Hogan on the 100th.
By the way, sorry to interrupt, Brundo. Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger should probably get some consideration for worst match of the year. Let me enter that before I forget. Buff versus Lex. All right, continue, Brundo.
Episode of Nitro. And he lost to Buff Bagwell, who might not even be top 10 in the NWO at this point. Then,
I take umbrage. Well, first of all, Buff, I don't think you're considering this, Brundo. Buff is the stuff. So we got to take that into account.
Control of WCW, Eric Bischoff versus Larry Zbyszko.
Banger.
I mean, any match in my mind that has Larry Zbyszko in it is trash.
Yeah.
That's where you stick the hottest man in professional wrestling at that point, Bret Hart, as a special guest referee. The match didn't even have a finish. And for what, in my opinion, should be your worst match of the year, Hulk Hogan versus Sting. This should have been 5 minutes of Sting rappelling from the ceiling and destroying Hogan. Instead, he walks down the aisle like another guy in wrestling. Hogan's not even scared of him. Hogan tries to wrestle him and throws him down like a fucking jobber. And then Sting loses. You could say it was a fast count, but your eyes and mine saw it. 1, 2, 3. He loses like a fucking jobber. Granted, Bret Hart, once again, the hottest guy in wrestling, restarts the match. The damage was done. This match starts the decline of WCW and should be considered the worst match for what it did. You will see next year that the aura of Sting never comes back to what it was this year. And WCW, for the tank, even though it took until 2001, this is the first nail in the coffin with many to come. I'm looking forward to 1998. Congratulations again, sir.
Shout out, Brundo. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, you know what? You do pose a good argument in terms of worst match of the year. So I would say, like, the bulk of Sting and Hogan. You know what? God damn it, Bruno, you make a good point. Because I was looking at it like, Sting and Hogan, it was a pretty good match, but like, was it the match that we needed? The culmination of this entire story over a year, and we just have a pretty good match. Yeah, dude, having Sting rappel from the ceiling and like just destroy Hogan. No fast count shenanigans. God damn, dude, fuck. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, we need to at least throw that in the consideration block here. So we got Buff versus Lex. We also got Hogan versus Sting. Because what do I have? The worst right now is Sabu versus Sandman. Is that worse than Sting versus Hogan, given the build? Now, Sabu Sandman has a decent amount of build too, not near the level of Sting Hogan. But they are two ECW staples going off against each other on their biggest show to date. So, but then again, Starrcade 97 is also their biggest show to date of WCW, arguably. So, goddamn, pal. Do I throw that to WCW? You know what? Fuck me and my tight asshole, dude. We're getting a lot of Hogan slander, but you guys might be right. Oh, do I do it? All right. You know what? Brundo, Matt, you both have sold me on anti-Hogan. Hogan versus Sting. And you know what? You're right, Brundo. I think I did kind of go easy on it. And we're going to switch to the WCW, and you'll see the points at the bottom change right now. Boom. So that shifts us -3 from ECW to WCW. So it brings it a little closer. We got kind of a tight matchup here. Between the three companies. But yes, Hogan Sting, it's just like the nuts and bolts of the match are mostly okay. But the finish, maybe the worst finish of all time in a match that deserves the best finish of all time. God damn, you're right. You swayed me. I didn't think I'd be swayed. I'm going to be honest. But I was just giving you guys, sure. Plug yourself on my show, whatever. Yap along, whatever. But you guys are swaying me so far. So, man, appreciate you guys so far. But we got more on deck. We got more apron bumpers, more hard-ons to hear from. Let's go to my favorite Canadian that is named Frets. Frets! From the Fretzelmania podcast, reoccurring guest on the Apron Bump. He has himself a little video. Let's see if he shows his Canadian penis on this one, folks.
Hello, Pretty Kyle. Mr. Frets here from the Fretzelmania podcast on Wrestle Addict Radio, the cure for the Common Wrestling Podcast. Cheap pop, cheap plug. I got your 1997 Hottest Promotion Battle standings right here in front of me, and I agree with a good chunk of it. As you know, I reviewed 97 in the WWF on my podcast, and for the most part, it was ass. Except for the Hart Foundation, the Rise of Austin, and other things. Worst segment, Miss NWO. That was the best wrestling segment of all time, and you know it. And I'm going to rate...
Do I stop the video now? No, I know he's a horn dog, so I understand. Oh, continue.
The Rise of Austin, and other things. Worst segment, Miss NWO. That was the best wrestling segment of all time, and you know it. And I'm going to raise your worst wrestler, Prince Iakea, and suggest Ahmed Johnson. An ill-fated heel turn, injuries and setbacks, and so much more. So, yeah, let me know what you think there. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, pal. Ahmed Johnson, man, that's a name I haven't even said yet on this episode, I don't think. And he deserves some sort of recognition for something. It was a tough year for Ahmed Johnson, who 1996 was a big year for him. Exploded on the scene. Everybody loved him. He was cool. The music, the Pearl River plunge. He's jacked. He's wet. Everything. And then, yeah, the injuries were just brutal, man. He turned heel for literally 8 minutes. Comes back and he's just not the same. And yeah, dude, that's actually not a bad shout. I will say though, like, I'm trying to think of like his matches that he had. I think the street fight at WrestleMania was fine. He did some bullshit at King of the Ring that I think was okay. unfortunately just spent a lot of the year injured. He definitely deserves a shout, though. So worst wrestler, we'll put him in the hopper here in terms of like what to consider later. But Ahmed Johnson, let's see here. Ahmed Johnson or Prince Iakea. I feel like Prince Iakea and Ahmed Johnson had a similar impact on their respective company, which is not a huge impact. But yeah, both equally in my head, kind of negative impacts. That's not actually true. I think Ahmed provided some positives, whereas Prince Iakea did not. You know what I mean? And I think Ahmed, while definitely not as good as his 1996, I think 97, Ahmed was just okay. I think, looking at it, his career, it was pretty disastrous given all the injuries and stuff. But I think what we got on screen from him, for the most part, was ranged from meh to okay. Whereas Prince Ikea just gave us some dog shit. So I think out the gate, I think I disagree with you, Frets, but I do appreciate the appreciation, the consideration. He is not a name I thought of, and he deserved my consideration for that. So I appreciate that, Frets. All right, who's next? We got I think the last video we got is from my boy Greg from Good Mic Work Commentaries. Always love having Greg on the podcast. I've said it before, he's one of the first wrestling podcasts I ever listened to. And more importantly, in this case, super knowledgeable on the year of 1997. I think he might say it in this video, I don't know, but I think it's one of his favorite years of wrestling. And he's very, very familiar with the year and the content. So I think he could provide some really good insight here. Let's see what Greg has to say.
Hey, what's up? Greg Morgan, a.k.a. Good Mic Work here, and Kyle has summoned some of YouTube's best and sexiest pro wrestling content creators to help him decide what the hardest promotion of 1997 was. He has these broken down into 12 categories, and I've got it split right down the middle. I agree with half of it, and I disagree with half of it. Here's what I agree with. Best pay-per-view, you've got ECW. Now, they only had 3 pay-per-views that year, but I'm going to go ahead and agree with you here because you really got your money's worth out of all 3 of those shows. WWE had a few solid ones as well. Big Royal Rumble, solid WrestleMania with Brett and Austin. Don't forget that amazing Canadian Stampede they had in the summer. Best TV, you've got WCW. Can't disagree there, but barely. I think WWE, their production values were much better than WCW's, but it was just impossible. It's impossible really to vote against them because of all the talent they had there and the type of numbers they were doing on cable. So got to agree with WCW having the best TV. Best in-ring also goes to WCW. Tough to argue that one. I think WWE still had the better pay-per-view main events, but in terms of the overall in-ring quality of the roster, WCW destroyed WWE.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much right in line with you, Greg, so far.
Primarily because of those cruiserweights. Best match, you have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart from WrestleMania 13. Cannot disagree with that at all. That might be the greatest match of all time. Best character / storyline. I actually think these should be 2 separate categories. Now, you have Stone Cold Steve Austin as the best character, which I 1,000,000,000,000% agree with.
That is, sorry. I'm saying sorry to not a real person right now. Yeah, I think maybe going forward, I think character and storyline will be different criteria. I think I might have had that the case in 96. But there were just it was kind of bleeds over sometimes. But yeah, I hear you, Greg.
He has that by a mile. But also, I think the best storyline of 1997 was one that he was dead center in the middle of, and that was the USA versus Canada feud from the summer of 1997 in WWE. Best wrestler of 1997, you've got Eddie Guerrero. I'm going to give you that one and agree, but man, just barely. Don't forget, you still had Benoit, Shawn Michaels, Owen, Ray, Brett, Dean Malenko, who I think was actually the #1 ranked wrestler in the PWI 500 that year. A lot of great talent in 97, but hell, we all love Eddie. In terms of what I disagree with, I got to disagree with you on the out-of-ring stuff. I think WWE, WWF, I should say, was much better at anything that took place outside of a wrestling ring than WCW. They had the better interviews, the better promos. Don't forget, that was the year that JR sat down with Goldust and Mankind and kind of got to know them a little bit better. A lot of people really enjoyed those interviews from back in those days. Don't forget all the DX stuff, the State of the Union address, some of the little segments Jim Cornette was doing.
I will say, you do make a good point here, Greg. I don't think WCW really did any of those like pre-recorded like backstage type of like vignettes or segments or interviews. Like he had Mean Gene there in WCW, which was great. Some good promos there, but yeah, I think that is actually a very good point that like WWF may have had the more like robust kind of system of like, you have some backstage promos, you have some in-ring promos, but you also have these like these series of interviews, like you mentioned with Mankind, with Goldust, the DX stuff, of course. Like NWO had some kind of bullshitty kind of like backstage stuff, but yeah, I mean promos are, yeah. So I'm just trying to like argue against it, but you do make a strong argument. You're still going, but yeah.
On Raw, where he was talking trash about WCW and the wrestling business. Yep. I think production-wise and anything that happened outside of a wrestling ring, WWE did it better than anyone in 1997 and pretty much always has. For the best segment of 1997, you have Jerry Lawler's appearance at ECW WrestlePalooza, and that was an amazing surprise. And I don't think I've ever seen that much heat concentrated in such a small space before in my entire life in pro wrestling. But it was still ECW, who was a distant number 3 to the other two. And I think for me personally, my favorite segment of 97 was, I think, 3 segments. It was the night after, I believe it was In Your House, Revenge of the Taker. And it was that long, show-long ordeal between Bret Hart and Steve Austin, where they brawled throughout several segments of the show. This was all set up to write Bret off of TV for a while to go get a little scope job done on his knee. And Austin and Bret had an amazing brawl stretching throughout the entire duration of Raw that included the ambulance spot where Austin was behind the wheel of the ambulance. He pulls Bret out. He's beating the hell out of him. I even think Gorilla Monsoon might have gotten in his face that night as well. So that was my favorite segment.
Yeah, no, I hear you. In terms of like ECW being a distant number 3, I totally agree. I still think though, because it was so connected to WWF, even though I don't know if they really referenced it on Raw or anything, it was still like a major moment, especially like for ECW to have actively WWF, personas on their television show. And like you said, it was just, the most heat of anything that happened this year, arguably. So I think I still lean towards WrestlePalooza, but the segments with Bret and Austin definitely deserve recognition. If there was like a top 3 situation here, that would probably be there. So.
Of 1997. Worst character / storyline. Again, I think these should be 2 separate categories. You've got the worst character and storyline, the Pillman and Goldust angle, where Marlena had to join Brian Pillman for 30 days after Pillman had beaten Goldust. I believe that would have been at Ground Zero. I did not think this was the worst storyline of 1997. I actually enjoyed that because I knew how it was going to
because he's a cuck himself. I'll finish it for him.
End. Marlena was going to leave. That would have been at Ground Zero. I did not think this was the worst storyline of 1997. I actually enjoyed that because.
How do we think this sentence is going to end? Look, we're not kink shaming here, as Matt Ritter scolded me for earlier. Look, Greg Morgan, look, if he likes the cucking, who am I to say? Who am I to say? Does that diminish his viewpoints? I don't think so. So I'm proud of you though, Greg, for coming out and saying that you are aligned with Jim Cornette and his fetishes, but continue.
I knew how it was going to end. Marlena was going to leave Goldust and join Brian Pillman, and I think that would have been really fun. However, unfortunately, the day that match was supposed to happen, Brian Pillman passed away. So if I had to choose the worst character or storyline of 1997, it's a pretty easy one for me. The fucking Truth Commission and the Commandant. Worst.
Hold the fuck on, Greg. Chill out for a second. It's been nice and friendly so far, but I'm going to push back on the Truth Commission. The Truth Commission, the presentation of the Truth Commission was stellar. And the music, the dum, 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 like the stomping, that them walking in unison, the militaristic aesthetic. Maybe it kind of fell apart in ring, but like I enjoyed the Truth Commission personally. But you said the Commandant, so that first iteration of the Truth Commission, which was a little rough. So you know what? I shouldn't interrupt. Sway me.
Match, you've got Sabu versus Sandman in a tables and ladders match. I honestly don't. Pretty easy one for me. The fucking Truth Commission and the Commandant. Worst match, you've got Sabu versus Sandman in a tables and ladders match. I honestly don't recall that one. I don't recall how bad it was.
Lucky you.
I might have seen it, but I don't remember anything about it. So it's not like occupying a space in my head as being a really, really bad match of 1997. That accolade is going to our friends Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper at Halloween Havoc 1997 with that horrific cage match.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan's getting beat up by the listeners here, and look, I can't. Yeah, Hulk Hogan is getting beat up by everybody here so far, and it's hard to disagree that a cage match is brutal.
To close the show, one of the worst matches I think I have ever seen. And then they would follow it up the following year with Hogan and Warrior. So WCW was really on a roll there with their Hogan matches at Halloween Havoc in the late 90s. Worst wrestler of 1997, you've got Prince Iakea. What the fuck did he ever do to you, Kyle? Poor
existed.
Prince Iakea out here catching strays. Prince Iakea? Really? I mean, he wasn't great, but my God, worst wrestler of 1997? I'm going Ahmed Johnson all the way on there. Man, oh man, he just wrestled like a wet biscuit. Prince Iakea wasn't.
I love a wet biscuit, so maybe that's where we differ.
That bad. I think he was a TV champion or cruiserweight champion or something. So obviously he doesn't stand out as one of the greatest wrestlers of 1997, but I think there are far worse wrestlers than Prince Iakea. I'm just now noticing that I made a slight mistake on the worst segment. I actually agree with you on the worst segment. The Miss NWO pageant, which I believe was Sold Out, right?
Yes.
Was absolutely awful, and it's received a lot of criticism over the years. So I'm not going to disagree with you on that. But the one I just brought up a minute ago, that Commandant debut, to me, that was so bad.
That was
and
tough.
Also, there was the interview with Jim Ross, an in-ring interview with Jim Ross and Shawn Michaels, where he famously stuffed gauze down his pants and was just acting like a jackass the whole time. That is up there as well for the worst segment, but WCW Sold Out, the Miss NWO pageant, was easily the worst, so I am going to agree with you there, which means the total amount of categories that I agree with you on are 7, and I disagree with you on 5. So it's not split 50-50 like I thought. I hope I didn't talk too long. Peace.
Beautiful. Some stuff I agreed with, some stuff I disagreed with, which is perfect. Perfect. Yeah, another Ahmed Johnson shout out. Dude. Again, I just talked about it. I think I feel like the presence that Ahmed had was fine. I think it was just the injuries that, stifled him. I'm a slut for big black wet wrestlers, okay? I'm just going to say it. That's my favorite type of wrestler. So maybe it's my bias. But guess what? Pals, it's my scoreboard. And I'm not going to put Ahmed Johnson out there. Unless there was a category for most knee pads, or you know what I mean? Ahmed Johnson's not going up there. So but yeah, Hogan and Piper, worst match of the year. That's definitely a strong argument. I'd be curious to see if your opinion was swayed, if you caught Sabu Sandman from November to Remember, the tables and ladders match. I think I'm going to leave it as I changed it. Hogan and Sting. Sorry, I forgot I changed it. Oh, and also, by the way, he brought up best out of ring potentially going to WWF, which I think I kind of talked about it, but there's a really good argument. I guess, when I look at best out of ring, I'm thinking like I'm thinking of like the collection of storylines and characters, but in reality, especially when we're comparing it to in-ring, best out of ring really should be like the production, not really the production, but just, well, I guess kind of the production, like the potpourri of interviews, backstage vignettes, variety and ways to get across messages from the wrestlers and other personas involved. And it is true, like WCW, they have the mean Gene Okerlund shtick, which is great. He'll interview guys on the stage and whatnot. Like, I love all that. But WWF does kind of have a more robust kind of tool bag of like, they'll do some backstage interviews, they'll do in-ring interviews, they'll do pre-recorded vignettes, like Greg mentioned, the Mankind stuff when they're interviewing him for, it's like a series of, over the course of a couple weeks. They did the same thing with Goldust. Gosh, yeah. Should that go to WWF? Plus all the brawling and stuff. Like, I feel like we were talking about the Steve Austin, Bret Hart stuff. I mean, that stuff like that. You don't get a ton of that in WCW. In the WCW, you will get the occasional like NWO, like when they came out and like deconstructed the set and turned everything from Nitro into NWO. Although that was a little long in the tooth, it did take a long time. But there is stuff like that kind of gives you this like ambiance of like, we're in this, like we're in this story, we're in this environment where the NWO is taken over. So WCW does do a lot of good stuff like that. ECW does some good promos and stuff, but that's pretty much the extent of their out of ring. Actually, no, ECW, they do deserve a shout because they'll have like, this is a bad example, but it's just one I thought of. It's like where Shane Douglas is in his Speedo at the beach with Francine, and he's like, Pitbull number was Pitbull number 1. He was when he had a broken neck, he couldn't move, and then Shane Douglas is out there swimming with his girl. They have little goofy stuff like that. Raven will be swinging at the park, talking nonsense. I do think, though, that all being said, I think we might shift best out of. Oh, goo, man. Here, you know what I'm going to do? Here's one thing I'm going to do. I am going to take this scoreboard off, right? Because I don't want that to shift my mindset. I don't want to like try to finagle the score into something that I want it to. I want this to just be unbiased, raw opinions. I think best out of ring. Ooh. Goes from WCW. That's a big 10 points, dude. From WCW to WWF. Wow. Gee whiz, man. Gee whiz. We'll keep on pushing along, man, but WCW is not in as stark of a lead. You know what? Should I just keep the scoreboard up? That might actually create more drama. You know what? We'll keep the scoreboard up. Look at the score. Look at this fucking scoreboard now, dude. Before, WWF was just dead last, had no chance. Fuck them. They're not even being considered to be hardest in 1997. Now, current score update, folks. WWF has taken the lead. Number 1. And you can't write this. I mean, you could, but I didn't. WWF in the lead with 22 points. WCW in second with 21 points. And ECW in third with 20 points. That is 22, 21, and 20. I mean, this race is tighter than a corporate handshake, folks. That is a phrase I heard the other day, and it hasn't left my mind. It's tighter than a lot of things. Fill in the blanks. But we're not done here yet. We got one more voicemail to listen to. We got a few text messages to read through and a Twitter thread or two to read through. And then we will kind of reconvene, make our final decision, and lock in all of these categories. But with that said, let's move on to our final submission here. It is a voice message from everybody's favorite box of juice. Juice Springsteen from the Juicebox Wrestling Podcast. Gee whiz, I wonder what company he's going to be championing. Let's take a listen to old Juicy.
Ah, yes, the Apron Bump's hardest promotion of 1997. Well, I'm not Kyle, but I am Juice Springsteen of the Juicebox Pro Wrestling Podcast, and man, for 1997, I got to agree with the rankings, the standings. WCW, 34 points. I mean, look, I know I've been on a few of the shows that we've discussed, myself and Apron Bump throughout this 97 portion. I did, I think, A Cold Day in Hell, and we did a few WCW shows. And I got to say, I agree with the points. When you talk about these individually, though, these kind of categories, best pay-per-views / special events, ECW, though. Not sure if I agree with that. There's only so many things X-rated you can put on pay-per-view that would beat out Sting flying down from the rafters to close out uncensored 90s.
Okay, yeah, sure. The WCW had their moments, but before Sting came down from the rafters, what were we watching? Probably some fucking Hugh Morris versus Virgil or some shit. You know what I mean? At ECW, it's an average, right? And ECW did their ECW thing well, is why I generally graded their shows pretty high. And WCW had a lot of good shows. I dare say maybe some of the best shows were WCW, but also some of the worst shows were WCW. So with that average intact, and like we mentioned, WCW was just behind ECW, even with a few disaster pay-per-views from WCW. Let's even pull it up here. Hold on. Why talking hypotheticals when we have the gosh darn Excel spreadsheet right here, man? Look, WCW. Let's filter this to WCW. Let's look at some of the scores here. Sold Out with a 52. That's tough. Is that the worst show? What is the worst show? I'm actually kind of curious. Smallest to largest. Sold Out. The worst show of the year, according to the scale. Road Wild, not far behind it with a 54. And WWF had a bunch of stinkers. But if you go to the other end of the spectrum here, WrestlePalooza, 82. Apparently the best show of the year. But Super Brawl, barely behind it with an 81. So WCW's on both ends of the spectrum here. Some of the best and some of the worst. Uncensored, you were just talking about, we gave it a 78. The third best show of the year, according to the scale. Spring Stampede, another good one. I mean, WCW had a lot of real, look at, out of the top, let's see here. Out of the top 8 shows. Now, remember, there's 32 shows here we're talking about. 32 shows. The top 8, 6 of them are WCW. That's impressive. However, out of the bottom 4, 2 of them are also WCW. So that's just how the averages work. Honestly, like if you look at this, we need to take like a statistician to this. Like the standard deviation, I mean, the difference between the best and the worst was only 30. So I think maybe going forward, maybe in 1998, I should be more extreme with it. I should give good shows like really high scores. Like nothing even came close to being in the 90s, which seems like, I don't know, it feels like 1997. There should be some 90s in there, but we graded each show on the same scale. So it was a fair game regardless. But I do think maybe going forward, we do get a little bit more loose with the scale. Maybe some 30s in there, some 20s, but also some 90s. So I hear you, Juice, but the numbers don't lie. And they spell disaster for you at Sacrifice. But continue, Juice. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I mean, I did. I fully did. But, and I'm also not sorry. But continue.
7, but I digress because TV product, in-ring, and out-of-ring all were WCW. I also disagree with the best segment being Jerry Lawler at WrestlePalooza. However, that is a great segment, but dare I say, not the end of Uncensored 97, I will reiterate. Some of the other things I do agree with
Sure.
worst wrestler, Prince Iaukea. I mean, there's probably a myriad of wrestlers that I could have chosen for that, but I definitely agree that Iaukea was among the worst. And how dare you put Miss NWO as the worst segment? WCW Sold Out 97 was one of the greatest pay-per-views. I'm just kidding. It was dog trash. I'm glad that I believe we reviewed it and it was horrific. However, that ladder match was pretty spectacular between Six and Eddie Guerrero.
Sure.
But when I look at things as a whole, it is abhorrently clear. WCW at 34, doubling ECW.
This is before, obviously, the scoreboard and all of the shifts that have happened, but I hear you, Juice.
And WWF was 7. Pretty tough for me to disagree with that. So, as the WCW guy, hardest promotion of 1997 on the apron bump, WCW absolutely deserves the top spot. And I'm looking forward to 1998 on the apron bump. I'm Juice Springsteen, and I hope you guys check out the apron bump each and every week, wherever you listen to podcasts.
What a guy. Kind of got into Michael Buffer a little bit at the end there, but love it, Juice. Love it, Juice. Appreciate the input. Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much agreed with most things, right? Segment, I think your main pushback was segment of the year, the best segment. You think Sting rappelling from the rafters at Uncensored was the best. You know, it's hard to disagree, really. I just think the Jerry Lawler segment had a little bit more teeth to it. I think Sting rappelling was a good moment. To me, it honestly, to me, it's not even a moment that really sticks out. I mean, it does, but it's not like among the top 3 moments. Jerry Lawler, I gushed about it earlier. I don't need to reiterate, but it was just such so much heat. And that's something that's so valuable in wrestling. It's so hard to come by. And it was just, again, I encourage everybody to listen to the WrestlePalooza episode where we go into detail about this segment and what led up to it. And even some of the following episodes where we talk about the effects of it. But it was just combined with the Raven, Tommy Dreamer stuff, also with the RVD stuff, which was red hot at the moment. And then it's just Jerry Lawler and ECW, which is just insane. So I'm going to stand firm on Jerry Lawler here. But you pose a very good argument, Juice. I could easily put Sting rappelling from the rafters here at Uncensored, and it would make sense. But I think for now, we're going to leave it as is. All right. What else? What else, folks? We got some text here. You know what? Let's go to the old everybody's favorite website / application. That's right, X.com. All right, so I brought it up on my screen here. I basically put out a post on X, basically as a call to action to make everybody's voice heard. If you have any rebuttals, I posted an image of the current scoreboard as of that moment. We've, of course, have seen changes since then. But I basically put it out and I was like, hey, anybody got any rebuttals, any disagreements, any inputs? Let me know. Holler at me. And this prompted everybody to send in their videos and their voice messages. But we also got a few messages via letters, via text, and including from our boy, Scott George, friend of the Apron Bump, swell guy, huge cock, says, Scott, he says that, hi, Kyle, I have no real complaints about how 1997 panned out. Even though Prince Iaukea didn't finish 1997 in any real storylines, he sucked enough for the first quarter of the year that no one could surpass him. And I still liked Taz over Steve Austin for in-ring. Steve Austin got injured. Very interesting points all around. I'll bring the scoreboard back up. So I will say I've been, pretty shaky on Prince Iaukea for a long time. Like, I've had him here. He's stayed here as the worst wrestler of the year. But I've said it before. Scott even kind of echoed my sentiment. It's like, he wasn't in a lot of big time storylines. He wasn't really a major factor for a big chunk of the year. He wasn't even on TV, really. He did have that TV title run, but that was pretty much the extent of his impact. However, again, as Scott said, it was, a relatively short window, but it was a bad window. And in a year where everybody's just firing on all cylinders, this is more of a testament to the lack of bad in 1997. I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's not a lot of guys out there. I know Matt Ritter earlier was saying Hogan, but I disagree with that. There's not a lot of guys out there in 1997 that are just consistently putting out bad stuff. The talent depth is too deep. The stakes are too high with the ratings wars and all that stuff. There's just not a lot of extended periods of duds. Prince Ikea is probably the best example of it, being whatever it was, like 3 or 4 months he was TV champion. So I appreciate you, Scott, and others, even Juice, the WCW guy. He couldn't even really push back on it. He's like, yeah, sure, Prince Ikea. I mean, it's my company. It's my baby, but I can't disagree with you. Hardest part of the ring. So we're kind of I dare say we're about to lock it in, but we'll save that for the end here. And what else did you say? So you say Taz has a claim for wrestler of the year, which I like. I shouted him out earlier. He's definitely in the running. If there was like a top 3 situation here, which maybe next year we'll expand on it. Who knows? If there's a top 3 situation, Taz would definitely be on that top 3, but is he number 1 is the question. So, and I said it before, and maybe I could have even specified when I put out that post or in past episodes even. When we're looking at this scoreboard, wrestler of the year, the emphasis is on in-ring. Character plays a part, but again, the majority of the emphasis is in-ring quality. And character storyline below it is more where you get into the obviously the character, their persona, their promos, their presence, all of that stuff. Again, like Greg said earlier, I think character and storyline could be different line items, and perhaps they will be next year. But I think Taz, in any other year, Taz might nail this one. I don't think he's a better character than Steve Austin. And I don't think he's a better wrestler than Eddie Guerrero, is the unfortunate kind of, this is just the unfortunate opinion that I hold. And I think it's hard to disagree with. So, again, Eddie's a kind of a sneak. Not a lot of people will get to it here on X. Not a lot of people were shouting out Eddie for wrestler of the year, but when you live through the year in real time, as I've been doing, and you just see the consistent quality that this dude is putting out on top of a match of a generation that he had with his match with Ray at Halloween Havoc. It's just great stuff. It's great stuff. Even Juice, who was just talking about, that sold out, that terrible pay-per-view. The one shining light was the Eddie Guerrero match. So, with that being said, I think we're going to keep the score as it is for now, but we will progress here to, let me find this post here, because this is where I might have some umbrage with some people and how just how people talk sometimes on this fucking dumb app. Hold on, let me pull it up here. Bing, bang, boom. All right, so I got the post up here. Basically what I said is between WWF, WCW, and ECW, who was the wrestler of the year in 1997? Now, again, I could have specified here that I'm looking for more in ring, but I think we can take the responses here and kind of apply them to both wrestler of the year and character / storyline of the year. So we will go back here. I had some images included, but it doesn't have to be any of these guys pictured. I just opened it up. Who's the wrestler of the year in 1997 among these 3 companies? Fretz said that I'd pick Brett, but he was hurt for a good chunk. Same with Austin. DDP was really coming into his own in 1997. And that's one thing that Scott said that I forgot to address. He was talking about how Steve Austin was injured for a big chunk of 1997. But I think even so, the stuff that he was able to do pre-neck injury, his matches with Brett, his match with Shawn at King of the Ring, the Final Four match, the Royal Rumble, his match with The Undertaker at In Your House, all of the Raw matches he had, and even some of the matches he had post neck break. Not a lot of great matches, of course, due to his limitations. But I think with that match catalog that he had pre neck break, like just up until August, that combined with his other character work is all combined to make him Wrestler of the Year in my eyes. I don't think even with his short, sawed off kind of timeline of matches that he was able to have, I still think that catalog of matches supersedes pretty much anybody else. But then again, see, I'm even kind of confusing myself. I'm talking about the matches, but we're really talking about the best character / storyline, which is Steve Austin currently. I think the matches, though, I think they add to the character. I think they make him more intriguing. They make him more in demand. You're more excited to see him. And between all of those matches, he's doing, how Greg Morgan was talking about the brawling and all the storyline stuff with the Hart Foundation, his stuff early in the year where he won the Rumble but didn't. And then, of course, post neck break, that whatever it was, 4 or 5 months of him not really being able to wrestle, he had to amp up his character. They had to get creative with how to utilize Steve Austin. And I think, and we talked about it before on that episode where he broke his neck, I think him breaking his neck, man, might have been the best thing for him because it made him stand out. It made him do things that nobody else was doing. And it all aided his character that he had already established before he broke his neck. So with all of that whole package that I just talked about, it's hard to argue against Steve Austin, in my opinion. Taz was great. Taz was a great character. I think he had a legitimacy about him. He felt very organic. He felt very, very authentic. And he had some good matches. The storyline with Sabu was great. I think Taz kind of was spinning his wheels a little bit, maybe in the last half of 1997, unfortunately, kind of always in a throwaway match. And that's kind of the nature of what he's doing. He's defending the TV title. He's just kind of being that guy. He's borderline kind of an open challenge type of situation, which is good. It's always a valuable part of the show, but I just don't think that puts him at number one in terms of character or Wrestler of the Year. And then Fretz here is talking about Brett. But he also mentions that he was hurt for a good chunk of the year. And really, Brett, honestly, kind of a weaker year, to be honest. I mean, outside of obviously the match is Stone Cold, but outside of that, I mean, a decent match with Undertaker at SummerSlam. A lot of bad stuff with the Patriot going on there towards the later half of his run. A really good match with Shawn Michaels, the Montreal Screwjob. A lot of people forget that it was a really good match up until then. But outside of that, just not a ton of bright spots for Brett, if I'm being honest. And who else are you talking about? DDP was really coming into his own in 1997. Absolutely agree. I would love to throw DDP something here because he was such a it was such a fun watching this guy organically get over with the crowd and just build and build and build. He's still building as we speak, as we're working through this timeline. So he's been a fun watch, DDP. I unfortunately just don't think he's number one in this case, whether it's Wrestler of the Year or Character of the Year. But he deserves a shout for sure. Bishop from Terrible Wrestling Takes chimes in, says that Austin and DDP were so over. Yeah, kind of just echoing my sentiment here. DDP definitely, he was up there. Again, if there was a top 3, top 5 situation, he'd be on that list. But we're just talking about number one here. And I just don't think DDP falls there. So, by the way, this cocksucker here, Steve Pelican, if that is your real name, says, that's a huge stretch for content. Who was Wrestler of the Year 30 years ago? Yeah, let me talk about if AEW did this, or if WWE did this, AEW, the ratings, the creative, Paul Levesque and TKO. Yeah, I should talk more about that, right? Because there's not enough of that in this space. Roger that. Roger that, Steve. You fucking chode. What is this fucking profile picture? Let's get into it. What even is this? Is that muscles? His profile picture is muscles and bread. Yeah. Suck me from the back, you fucking jizz bag. Anyways, what were we talking about? All right. Who else? Wrestler of the Year of 1997. Alex0212 says Brett. Brett was the Wrestler of the Year. And he says that Hogan was still the biggest star, but not around as much other than a couple of big matches and building for Sting. Austin was on his way, but this was the build to what he would later become, very much helped by Brett. Taker and Shawn were close, but Brett was the focal point. So you say, Alex, that Brett was the Wrestler of the Year. A few things here. You say a lot of things here. Hogan was the biggest star, but not around. Yeah, nobody's saying that Hogan was the Wrestler of the Year. So we're on track there. You say that Austin was on his way, and I disagree, dude. He is the top guy in the company for pretty much after WrestleMania and on. He's the top guy in the company. It's not Brett. It's not Shawn. It's not Undertaker. It's Steve fucking Austin. He's the top guy. He's Austin 316 shirts all around the arena. They're doing giveaways for a fucking F-150 with Austin 316 on the side. He's in all the commercials. He's throwing out first pitches. Steve Austin, Stone Cold, is the guy. He's not on his way. He's not building up. He is as hot. In 1998, I get it. He wins the title. The Mike Tyson stuff, he still has a little bit of elevation that he will see in the future. However, dude, all of the foundation is built here in 1997. By the end of 1997, he's getting the biggest pops in the industry. That's just how it is. But you do say his build was helped by Brett, which is valid. It is valid. Obviously, the WrestleMania match was the catalyst for his ascension. Austin's ascension. So a valid point there. And then you also say Taker and Shawn were close, but Brett was the focal point. I just don't think Brett was a focal. I mean, the Hart Foundation obviously was a big focal point for a big chunk of the year. But I mean, between Brett's injury and even when he wasn't injured, I mean, he's fucking around with the Patriot, and Brett's up there. Like, I'm not trying to diminish Bret Hart, but 1997 just isn't his best year, especially when you consider the Montreal Screwjob and after that. I mean, his WCW stuff, I think, is already tarnishing his year, even though it was like a month. But yeah, so I disagree. Brett's up there. He's top 5 probably, but not number 1 in my opinion. Blake Mitchmore says, I think you have to say Austin because that was the beginning of his run that made him a megastar, but DDP was really good then. Again, I agree 100%. I just think Steve was just a bit above DDP here. Paul Patron says Bret Hart, best heel turn ever. A great heel turn, great character stuff from Bret. Maybe the best character stuff of his year. I just think his in-ring was lacking. But does Bret Hart deserve a shout for best character of the year? The Hart Foundation stuff was very strong. Again, him being a heel in America and a babyface. Otherwise, I think it was a fun twist, and I think it really amplified the what do you want to call it? Evil foreigner type of gimmick. But I think it was great. I just don't think it's better than the culmination of everything Steve Austin did this year as a character. And a lot of people are saying Sting here. Benny says no way, no one said Sting in here. A lot of people said Sting. Benny says Sting. At Wrestling TKO says obviously Sting. He was the guy in 1997. Look, man, if Sting was great. I talked about it earlier. I don't want to be too redundant here, but the build to Sting and Hogan was great. He was red hot. He just didn't provide. His value was in the fact that he wasn't there. Like, his value was showing up every once in a while, and those times that he showed up were big moments. But you compare that against Steve Austin being there day in and day out, even after breaking his neck. I think that gives Steve the edge because he was actively doing things, whereas Sting was passively doing things. Both things were great. I'm not shitting on Sting, but when you combine the character work of each guy, also with Steve Austin having the matches to back it up, whereas Sting did not. I think that gives Steve the edge, in my opinion. Some other people are saying Brett. Some people are saying Hogan, actually. Brett by far. Yeah, I think a lot of people are misremembering 1997, unfortunately. Or they just have a different opinion, which is fine. I just think, again, I've said it before. I've been saying it. I think Steve is a little better. Eddie Guerrero, some people are agreeing, Wrestler of the Year. Dean Malenko, I think he might have been, was it Greg said that he was PWI Wrestler of 1997? Sure, I don't even know if I agree with that, to be honest. Dean was good. He was solid. Some good stuff, especially in the beginning of the year. I think, well, did he have like a U.S. title run that was pretty decent? I don't think he was better than Eddie in the ring, though. I don't even know if he was better than Ray, if I'm being honest. I don't think he was better than Steve Austin in the ring. I don't even know if he was better than Shawn Michaels or The Undertaker in the ring, Dean Malenko. So, who else were we saying? We got some people saying Sabu. Sabu was fun, but he also had a lot of stinkers, unfortunately. Triple H, again, I was talking before. Triple H had a sneaky good year, just not number one. Goldust. All right. Yeah, I mean, oh, and by the way, when the guy that said obviously Sting, someone responded to him and said he had one match and it sucked. Which is kind of my thinking as well. So I got into it with somebody. Was it not this? Oh no, it was on my worst of the year, I think. Conan got a shout, by the way, which sure, he was a fun member of NWO, just not number one. All right, so I don't think anybody's really swaying me here. But maybe let's go to the worst. I put out another post about who's the worst wrestler of the 1997 year. Let's go to that one, shall we? All right, I have it pulled up here. Who's the worst wrestler of 1997 between WWF, ECW, and WCW? And by the way, I just grabbed some pictures of some guys that I thought had like weak years. Prince Ikea, Sandman, particularly in this November to Remember match. The Sultan here, and we got Buff Bagwell. Buff Bagwell had a pretty solid year character-wise, but in-ring, it was pretty disastrous. Wrestle G, shout out Wrestle G, says Kurgan was the worst of the... If we're just talking pure, like, technique, fluidity in the ring, or competency in the ring, Kurgan is impressively bad. Dude, he has a great look, right? Big guy, probably a nice guy, by the way. I don't want to shit on him too much. I know he went into acting and he found success in other mediums, but just a bizarrely built guy. He's 7 foot tall or whatever. It feels like he only does traps in the gym. Like he's just a bizarre looking fella, but a menacing looking guy. Had all the tools to be something at least like a middling good heel. Dude, you watch this guy in the ring and he just can't do anything. He can't do anything. He knows a sidewalk slam, and that's all. He ends up having like a claw as the finisher. You see him run the ropes. It's bad. He just doesn't do any moves. Do a power bomb. Do a scoop slam. I think all he's ever done is a sidewalk slam and maybe like a suplex or two. That looked pretty bad. Kurgan sucked. Kurgan fucking sucked. But he was pretty limited in his spotlight, what he was involved in. I thought his role in the Truth Commission as like the menacing looking guy in the back, I thought he was effective there. But I just don't think he provided enough in 1997, just from a match perspective, to really consider him as the worst. I think he still is in the running, but I think Prince Ikea and his TV title run, bad match with Rey Mysterio, I think that puts him a little bit above Kurgan, in my opinion. But I think that's a good shout out, Wrestle G. We got some more Prince Ikea shout outs, more agreeing with me. Keep Prince Ikea's name out your mouth. Sure. Rocky Maivia shout out. I don't think Rocky Maivia was that bad. It was just a poor, not even a poor, people weren't into it. You know, they tried it, they weren't into it, and they pivoted. And I think Rock had such a good back half of 1997 that I don't think he's even kind of in the running for worst of the year. The Sultan, sure. Again, he had a WrestleMania match, so that is a pretty big spotlight, but Yeah, I just think it was an outdated gimmick. Nobody cared about it. I don't think his matches were like that terrible, but it was just very uninspiring and it was dumb. Sure. I mean, I think it's definitely worth thinking about. I just don't think he's the worst guy. Brockus, I don't even think Brockus showed up in 1997. I think they were showing the vignettes. No, he showed up. Where did he pop up? He popped up in ECW as somebody's henchman or something, like his bodyguard. But outside of that, Brockus didn't really do anything. 1998, though, might be worth talking about. I didn't like Buff when I was a kid, but watching it all back, he was fantastic, very underrated, played the annoying heel perfectly. I agree. I think his role in the NWO, I think his character work, the way he talks, I think he's a great annoying heel. But his matches were just very bad, dude. There was no payoff to anything he did, and he was great at chirping, in the back behind Hogan and Nash and Hall. But yeah, pretty bad stuff in ring from Buff Bagwell. With stuff with Scotty Riggs. His matches with Scotty Riggs and match with Lex Luger at Starrcade. Pretty bad stuff. Worst wrestler of the year, 1997, Hulk Hogan. All right. I think Hogan had a pretty strong year, personally. I don't know if it's a year that ages particularly well. Again, very cheesy. A lot of it very cheesy, sure. But I think for the most part, it was more hits than misses from Hogan. Rockabilly, yeah, again, Rockabilly, I think we were tracking Rockabilly as the worst of the year for a while. But I think the turnaround into the New Age Outlaws stuff, I think, was so strong. Similar to the Rocky Maivia stuff, I think the pivot with Billy Gunn was so strong that I think I can't put Rockabilly as the worst. Another Kurgan shout out. Yeah, I hear you. Ahmed Johnson. Yeah, I mean, God, maybe I'm misremembering. I just don't remember a lot of bad. I mean, it's Ahmed Johnson. Like, you kind of know what you're expecting. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be clumsy, but that's the kind of stuff I like. And that's the kind of stuff I think wrestling needs more of. We need more Ahmed Johnsons. We need more Goldbergs. We need more, Scott Steiners. We need guys that are just like, things look ugly every once in a while. That's how fighting works. Like, not everything should be perfect and smooth and trimmed up. Some things should look and maybe hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think Ahmed Johnson was, not a strong year, of course. We talked about it earlier, but I don't think he was the worst. The injuries were tough. Could never really get going. It was a bad year for him. But for me as a viewer, I didn't get a lot of bad feelings from Ahmed Johnson watching him. I enjoyed most of what he did. Professionally, probably a terrible year for him. But as a viewer, which is kind of what we're basing this on, I don't think he was the worst. Got another Rocky Maivia, Sandman. I think Sandman, again, a terrible match at November to Remember with Sabu, but I think for the most part, it was a fine year for Sandman. Pretty par for the course, I would say, with Sandman. The Truth Commission, fuck off. They're great. Somebody says Sting is the worst wrestler of 1997. I mean, if we're going by just like in ring, sure, but we're not really. So Hawk, Goldberg didn't really have a great year in 1997. I love Goldberg, but he had some good squashes, but it's been a slow build for Goldberg. A lot slower than I thought it would be. So it was not a great year for Goldberg, but I think it's like this unknown guy that made a name for himself so quick. So I think that deserves some praise as well. Corporal Punishment from ECW. I honestly don't really remember him that much. Let's see. A lot of Buff Bagwell truthers here. Van Hammer. Yeah, Van Hammer is pretty bad too. But again, not a guy that's wrestled that much. And I think he served his purpose well as just a henchman with his nipples exposed. Brockus, again, a lot of people saying Brockus. Brockus didn't show up in 1997, at least not on TV. Unless it was on like Shotgun Saturday Night or something. Or one of these shows I'm not watching. There was no Brockus, not on Raw or Nitro or anything. So Sandman was trash. Giant Silva, I don't think he was around yet. Mabel, he was long gone before 97. Kevin Nash, I mean, the stuff he did was fine. I hate all of the tag team title shit him and Scott Hall have done, where they'll just lose a match and then the next night they'll be like, no, we didn't. We're still champions. And then they'll just reverse a decision. And it's a tough year creatively for Kevin Nash, I would say, but I don't think he's the worst. Hulk Hogan, Mongo, fuck you. Mongo was a treat. There's one guy in particular that I was like pissed that I even, by the way, I made this post. Who is the worst wrestler of 1997? And I just included some pictures of some guys that had some weak 97s. I wasn't saying Buff Bagwell was the worst, but he is among the worst. And we have this guy. He's going like, Buff was fantastic in 1997. He legitimately had a chance to be a bigger star, actually. It wasn't until his neck injury scare in 98 and the storylines that came from it ended up hurting him. One more bad engagement bait post from this account, and I'm blocking you. First of all, we need to stop just fucking throwing out these buzzwords. Engagement bait. Buff Bagwell is engagement bait in 2026. Okay, pal. Whatever you say. And I say, hey, do you think that was a bit of an overreaction? And then he says, no, I don't. Choosing those people just shows me you probably aren't really familiar with each man's 1997. Let me just let that sit there for a second. How many fucking hours of documented, whatever, doesn't matter. And I basically say I just watched the entirety of 1997, and I say Buff had a good year character-wise, but had a weak year in ring. It's more of a testament to the quality of wrestlers in 1997 and how there were just not a lot of consistently bad workers. What I was just saying, right? So look at this fucking interaction. He says, fuck you, Buff was great, you're engagement baiting. And then I say, hey, do you think you're overreacting? He says, no, you aren't familiar. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, I do, actually. Here's why. Here's my rationale behind it. And then he says, you don't even understand in-ring wrestling, do you? I doubt you do. Do you see how this interaction is going? I'm trying to have a conversation. Maybe that's my fucking fault for going on X and trying to have a conversation with somebody where it's just a fucking cesspool of fuck you, engagement farming, rage bait, take this L, here's a GIF. Like, nobody talks to each other anymore. Nobody fucking takes input from somebody else, considers it, and responds. It's always just, here's my thought, fuck you, suck my dick, you suck, engagement farming, whatever. This is all of X. This is just a representation of every time I open this goddamn app, this is what it is. You can't talk to anybody anymore. You can't have an intelligent conversation. Fuck, man. And then I'm trying to be like, not confrontational about it. I'm literally trying to see if he can provide any like rationale behind his thoughts, because right now he's just insulting. So he says, you don't really understand in-ring wrestling, do you? I doubt you do. And I respond with that with, what was your favorite Buff Bagwell match from 1997? And then he says, what? First of all, why is the what necessary? He says, what? He's got a ton of, but hold on. Sorry, we got to rewind. I say, what is your favorite match? Why is what the response? Why is that like a crazy thing to ask in terms of this conversation? If Buff really had a great year, just list the great matches. But he doesn't. He says, well, he had a ton of fun matches teaming with Scott Norton in the US. What matches, dickhead? What fucking matches? Cite them. He had some fine matches on Nitro with Scott Norton. Vicious and Delicious they were fine. Were they great? No. He says sometimes randomly on Nitro, like, did you really? He's still doing this thing. Like, are you watching? Like, he can't just say the thing. He can't just like lean on his thought. He can't just, he can't just be confident in what he's saying. He has to add like I'm not even just trying to shit on this guy. This is everybody on X. Nobody can just like have their opinion and just like let their opinion or their thought speak for itself. It always needs like a preceding or some suffix at the end where it's like, poof, You don't know what you're talking about. Like, why does everything need that? God damn it, dude. He says a ton of fun matches in Japan. Like, did you really watch or were you on your phone? Where's he fucking pulling this from? On my phone? Yeah. Taking notes and then talking about it for hours on a podcast. Yeah, that's what I was doing, pal. And I say, do you hear how needlessly aggressive you are? And then he stopped responding. So thank God. Thank God. That I probably gave that way more time than it deserved, but I just had to vent because we need to fucking figure it out, guys. X, other social medias, we need to figure out how to like have conversations with each other because this whole app is just a fucking cesspool of bullshit, and it's just a representation of where I'm going to get into it. Anyways, hardest promotion battle of 1997. I think that pretty much about covers. Oh, we do got one more response, actually. We'll end it on a better note here. Ryan from the Count Out Wrestling podcast, former guest on the Apron Bump. He responded through text. He says, I don't really have any big gripes with your scoreboard. Like we watched Hogan versus Piper at Havoc 1997, and I gave that a checks notes. A fucking 0, but I haven't seen Sabu versus Sandman. So another champion of Hogan versus Piper being worst match of the year, which I think is valid. He says, I haven't seen enough Eddie to counteract your claim on his consistency, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if that was the case. Havoc 1997 versus Mysterio, you could also argue for match of the year. So in that regard, splitting match of the year and wrestler of the year among Eddie and Austin and Hart feels fair. He then says, WCW is just starting to be out of their bag in 1997, but they are still doing so well. I would maybe expect to do better in these votes, but I can't make any arguments really for why. I haven't watched the Pillman Goldust storyline, but I could maybe make a case for the Montreal Screwjob being the worst storyline or worst segment. I don't know which that would apply under. And then he says, okay, I'm reading up on Pillman making Marlena a sex slave for 30 days. And yeah, that was pretty rough. So yeah, kind of echoing my sentiments on a lot of things here. You do bring up a point that the Montreal Screwjob could be worst segment of the year. I don't know if that'd be a segment really. I know what you're saying. I just don't think it really fits into any of these categories per se. You could say storyline because they did kind of carry forward with it a little bit after that. You know what? Actually, I think I have decided to take the scoreboard off as we finalize these votes because I don't want to let it influence my decision here. It's a tight race. It's almost a tie at this point between the three companies, which is incredible at this point. I think at this point, folks, I think we're ready to lock in these points and finally decide who was the hardest promotion in 1997. All right, so we already locked in best pay-per-views. That was just due to the math of it. So ECW locks in those 15 points. Best TV. We're tracking WCW. I don't think I got any pushback on that. Raw was definitely getting stronger towards the end of the year. However, I think just from a consistency standpoint, more so than Raw, more so than ECW, I think Nitro was just great TV. In addition to because we're not talking about Pro or Saturday Night, but those I imagine were pretty solid as well. But just talking about the flagships here, best TV, I think we are going to push through with WCW. We are going to lock it in right about now. WCW captures those 15 points. Best in ring. WCW with 10 points is what we're tracking. And again, I didn't really get much pushback on this either. I'll say it one more time. I've said it 1,000 times while doing these. The breadth and the depth of the roster. The cruiserweights. I think the cruiserweights are carrying the load here. But also some good stuff in the main events and great stuff in between with your Benoits, your DDPs, your Macho Mans, things like that. I'll take one more second to think about it. WWF had some really high highs, but just from a consistency standpoint, I think WCW was just stronger. I just do. So with that being said, I think we're going to lock in best in ring goes to WCW. Best out of ring. Now it's something we just recently changed, and I'm honest, if I'm being honest, man, because you just had like, no, we're thinking of the entire year. WWF had some good stuff out of ring. The Mankind stuff was pretty good. The Gold Dust stuff, but you also had like the Brian Pillman, Marlena stuff. Again, WWF just had way more variety in what they would provide you from a production standpoint. But what does that mean? The quality was good, though, is really the question. Is that a good thing here? You got their Austin stuff, driving in with the pickup truck, watching Rock wrestle from the crowd in his truck while drinking beer. All the Undertaker and Kane stuff. We haven't gotten too deep into that, but WCW, though, they had really great promos. Did they, though? They had good promos. I do like the Mean Gene shtick. I think we got to give it to WWF. I think quality-wise, honestly, yeah, because you got the Stone Cold stuff alone, dude. And the Hart Foundation stuff out of ring, again, with Bret being injured. A lot of that stuff was out of the ring. Pillman being hurt. Man. Yeah. We're giving it to WWF. Best out of ring goes, at the last second, a buzzer beater goes to WWF. They keep those 10 points. Man, still a tight race. Still a tight race. And again, I'm going to hold off on showing the final score here on screen until the end, which is when we'll present the hardest promotion. So now we're going to move on one last time to the best section. All of these are the best of 1997. Best match of 1997, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13. Really, this is it Bret and Austin, or is it Ray and Eddie? We've talked about it a lot. I think Bret and they're both, two of the best matches to literally ever occur ever. Happening within a few months of each other in the same year. It's, I think that the edge that I give to Bret and Steve, the stakes, even though it's not for a title or anything, it's just WrestleMania, a marquee match, a great match. What happened in it, the double turn that occurred in it, the build. This is the thing, and I would also encourage anybody to go check out my review I did with WrestleMania 13 with Ibu from Self-Made. We talked about it, like the build or the organic builds of both Bret and Steve leading into it, and how they capitalized on that in the match was so effective. Steve organically getting over, even as a heel, he was just so cool, and everybody was getting behind him. Likewise with Bret, people were kind of turning against him a little bit for no real reason, but they took all of this, they combined it, and they implemented that psychology into the match. Austin not giving up, and then Bret attacking after the match. Like, this all was just this whole package deal in combination with just a good wrestling match, the intensity involved, the energy. I can't highlight enough the energy of this match was just so strong. Ray and Eddie was phenomenal, fluid. Innovative, especially for the time. Another match with really good energy to it. I just think the magnitude of the match, if that makes any sense. I just don't think, like, if you're watching it on mute with no other context of the characters, I think Ray and Eddie's the better match. However, with the context of the characters, with the context of where the match is occurring, with the context of just what is happening, like the interrelationships between the people involved, I think Bret and Steve just had a little bit more to offer than Ray versus Eddie at Halloween Havoc. That's just my opinion. If you disagree, it's valid. This is my argument against it, but I totally understand if other people have different perspectives. But I think match of the year, and there's really no other than those two matches to me, no real. I mean, you could throw Bad Blood 1997, the Hell in a Cell match in here for sure. It would still be WWF though, so it's not really worth a conversation here. But I think with that being said, we're going to lock in match of the year of 1997 goes to Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13. And WWF captures those 5 points. Wrestler of the year. Again, we've talked about it a lot already. We're tracking Eddie Guerrero as the best. Again, we had the conversations earlier. I don't even think we need to reiterate it. I don't think I was really swayed. I mean, you could throw Austin in here. You could throw Bret. You could throw Shawn. I just think Eddie was so good, dude. I think it's also makes sense to have, Stone Cold having the match of the year, but then the other match of the year being Ray versus Eddie. I think that deserves some highlight here as well. In addition to Eddie's matches with Jericho, with Syxx, with Dean, and just all of the random matches he would have on Nitro were just all so good. In conjunction with his character shift, which I don't even think we've touched on at this point, his heel turn, the mullet, he got jacked. He's basically what Dom seeks to be nowadays, but Eddie was just on a different level, dude. His in-ring quality in conjunction with his character shift towards the end of the year, I think that solidifies Wrestler of the Year going to Eddie Guerrero. WCW keeps those 5 points, and we move on to character / storyline of the year. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now it's character / storyline. What do we think about throwing Sting in here? I mean, we were talking about it. We've been talking about it a lot. Between Steve and Stone Cold and Sting, obviously Stone Cold had a lot more involvement on screen and did a lot more things. But when we're talking strictly character and storyline, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate against myself. Is there an argument for Sting? A great build-up, but we also got to consider the fact that it was a fumbled culmination, a fumbled finale. Where Steve Austin, I mean, you have his stuff with Bret, his stuff with the Hart Foundation, his stuff with Shawn Michaels, his stuff with The Rock. I mean, his stuff with Vince, even kind of getting seeds getting planted this year. I think it has to go to Steve Austin. I think it is. We're going to lock it in. Character / storyline of the year goes to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So WWF keeps those 5 points. Segment of the year. Best segment of the year. Jerry Lawler's debut at ECW WrestlePalooza. Now, other segments, of course, Sting rappelling from the ceiling at Uncensored. We got, what else? I mean, Bret and Stone Cold brawling around the arena. Some of the Kane and Undertaker stuff is pretty good. Some of the Mankind stuff's been pretty good. Nothing else really springs to mind here. And I think we've talked about it enough. I think I'm sold here. The best segment of the year of 1997 goes to ECW for Jerry Lawler's debut at WrestlePalooza. Now we move on to the worst. Worst match of the year. Hogan versus Sting. What did I have before? That's right. It's Sabu versus Sandman. You can also throw Taker versus Sid here. Undertaker versus Sid at WrestleMania was here for a bit. I'm kind of thinking it over again. I think it was Brundo that shifted me here because I had that ECW November to Remember match here before. I'm kind of thinking it over again because Hogan versus Sting at Starrcade could have been so good. Brundo even suggested maybe it even being kind of like an extended squash from Sting to Hogan. I don't know if necessarily that's what it needed to be. I don't know if I would have hated it. It would have been better than what ended up happening, that's for sure. I just the match, like you watch the match and people are into it. Like it's a decent match, but it needed to be a great match. Or another way to look at it is maybe it didn't need to be a good match. Maybe it's just the fact that Sting's in the ring. Maybe that's all we needed. God, am I? I don't know, man. It's between Hogan and Sting. You could do Hogan and Piper as well in the cage. Sabu versus Sandman. November to Remember. Fuck me and my tight dick, dude. I don't know. Do we lock this in? Hogan versus Sting, just the culmination, the biggest match, the biggest show of the year. And the finish was literally that bad to where now this is the worst match of the year. But the crowd popped at the end still, dude. You know? I don't know. Golly gee. You know what? Guys? I don't think this is it. I don't think Hogan versus Sting was the worst match of the year. I understand the argument. Hell, I even have it here. I don't know if we're gonna keep it. We're gonna take this out. Boom, boom. Oops, shit. Boom, boom. But what is the worst match of the year? What is the worst match of the year? Is it Sabu Sandman? But was I right? Was it Undertaker versus Sid was a very bad match also, and it was the main event of WrestleMania. It also had some Bret Hart fuckery similar to Hogan and Sting. Oh man, this is high stakes. Thank God I'm not looking at the scores because I don't want to let that. I think, guys, just what makes a bad match is really what it comes down to. The execution, the technique, the reactions from the crowd. If all of those are bad, it's a bad match. And I think the only match. You know what, guys? I'm sorry. I'm gonna type this out, and we're gonna let it sit, and we're gonna let it marinate for a second. Sabu versus Sandman, November to Remember, 1997. I think that was the worst match. I was second guessing myself earlier because I hear you, Brundo, and other people that have mentioned this. Terrible finish for Sting Hogan, but the match itself, I think, was okay. I think it wasn't good. It was okay. Sabu Sandman, terrible execution in the technique, a great build, another match that had build to it that just fumbled the execution. Obviously, it's a different magnitude when you compare Sabu Sandman against Sting and Hogan. Sting and Hogan just had the more substantial build, of course. However, when you combine the botches, the energy, the fluidity, the lack thereof, no cohesion, it's just a stunt show, and it's a stunt show to silence on ECW's third ever pay-per-view and their biggest show to date, November to Remember, their staple show, their landmark show. You have the two biggest guys in ECW history just fumble the ball. That, in combination with the badly executed match from a technical perspective, I think gives that the edge. And I think before we overthink it too much again, I think we're going to lock it in. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to put my finger on this gong. We're going to give it one more second. Is that right? Change it again. Can't change it anymore. The gong has sounded. Sabu Sandman, worst match of the year of 1997. And that -3 points goes to ECW. Tough blow for Paulie. Tough blow. Worst wrestler of the year, Prince Iaukea. Again, I've had people kind of confirm my thoughts here, both video, audio, and in the threads on X and stuff. Kurgan, sure, you could throw him in here, but he was just such a small blip on the radar here in 97. Hogan, you could make an argument. I just don't think it was that bad. We're locking it in. Prince Iaukea, the worst wrestler of 1997. And that -3 points goes to a WCW. Worst character / storyline of the year, Brian Pillman cucks Goldust. So this is the Pillman beating Goldust to win the services of Marlena and then leading up to his death, basically. That's not what caused it, but as far as I know. But terrible execution. I mean, it was bad. It's bad stuff. The matches weren't good. As I think it was Greg said earlier, it could have ended up being good if Marlena turned heel and joined Brian Pillman. But that's not what happened. We can't talk in hypotheticals. I think we might have to lock it in here, folks. I mean, you could put like a Hogan here. You could put a Virgil. You could put the Montreal Screwjob here. That's a thought. Does the Montreal Screwjob belong here? Worst storyline? I mean, it wasn't a storyline, though, is the thing. I just don't think it really fits here. I just don't think I don't think it logically fits here, but I think, yeah, it just doesn't logically fit here. I think we're going to lock it in. Brian Pillman cucking Goldust. Worst. And also, it just, we could, it's not really the same storyline per se. I'm almost inclined to just change this to Goldust because it doesn't really matter from a scoring perspective, but because like this bleeds into Goldust becoming the artist formerly known as Goldust, where he's wearing the blackface and he's dressed up as a baby and he's being leashed by Luna. We won't actually have it here on the scoreboard, or do we? You know what? Fuck it. Yeah, we're gonna do it. Just Goldust, which is crazy because I think in 1996 he might have been the best character, at least for a little bit. I think he was in the running for best character, and he just took a nosedive between. And I didn't even really like even like the humanization of Goldust. I didn't like. I think he had a very terrible year creatively. When he was a babyface in the beginning of the year and he was doing those interviews with JR, similar to the Mankind stuff. It's like, let's get to know Dustin Rhodes. No, he has paint on him. He's gold. He comes out in a gold jumpsuit with gold face paint. He's what did Vince say? He's androgynous. Now we're just gonna roll that back. Now he's just a regular asshole named Dustin that's dressed in gold face paint. That stunk. And then we bleed into the Brian Pillman stuff. That stunk. And then we go into his downfall with Luna Vachon dressing up as a baby or as a nurse or as Shaft. Like, I think this belongs to Goldust, and Goldust alone doesn't change the company that the points go to, but I think just for prosperity, I think we need to have this as just Goldust. And Goldust, therefore, locking it in, worst character of 1997. Now, two more left. Worst segment of the year, Miss NWO. Not even gonna think about it. I've been wanting to lock this in for months. It was just bad. You could, again, if Montreal Screwjob was a segment, you could throw this in there, which I guess it could be. Even so, I don't think it's worse than Miss NWO. Now, finally, the final points, and this may sway. This may determine the winner. Excitement going into 1998. 5 points are on the line. Which company at the end of 1997 am I most excited about going into 1998? And this is not taken into account hindsight. Of course, I know a lot of the things that happened in 1998, and most things that happened in 1998 I'm aware of. But we're not taking that into account. We're just basing this off of what we're seeing at the end of 1997 going into 1998. If I was watching live, which company would I be championing? Which company would I be tuning into to watch above all others based on the storylines, the matches, everything involved? Right now, we're tracking WWF. This is due to Steve Austin. The Rock is catching fire. We got the Undertaker Kane stuff brewing. Shawn Michaels, DX, the light heavyweights even. Like at the time, it's like, oh, maybe they'll do something with them. The tag team division's fine. It's about as good as it's been in a while with the New Age Outlaws. I mean, what else? That's about it, right? That's the bulk of the good. WCW, I mean, we're kind of par for the course here. We're kind of just status quo. We got NWO still involved. We got a little bit of turmoil with them, although I don't think that really starts until the beginning of 1998. But kind of a downfall in the sense that they've lost like all their titles. Sting's the champion. You know, Sting's finally back on TV wrestling. That's worth being excited about. The NWO is still rocking and rolling. You got Flair, Bret Hart's here, by the way. What's Bret Hart going to do? You know, at this moment, it's like, oh, maybe Bret's going to have a sick run in WCW. So there's a lot of good. ECW, it's not in the running. It's just not. It's fun. ECW is a fun promotion to watch. It's just, I don't think I'm more excited. Actually, I mean, in reality, I am excited because it's probably the company that I'm most in the dark about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know what happens in ECW in 1998. Not really. WCW, WWF, I got a pretty big picture. But as we're talking as if I didn't have that picture. And I just think WWF is hitting on all cylinders. I mean, me viewing this is kind of a similar trajectory, you know, looking at the ratings. This is kind of where WWF is starting to churn up a little bit and WCW is starting to lose it. And I think that's kind of being reflected in my enjoyment of the product so far. So I think WWF, in terms of being the most excited going into 1998, I think I am most excited about WWF. Oh, it's hot in here. Gee whiz, everybody. That's it. Everything's locked in. All the pencils down, everybody. We are locked the F in, folks. Now, there's only one thing left to do. We don't need the scoreboard anymore. Let me just talk to you as a person. Just full screen here. The hardest. With that being said, we've talked about it. We've gotten input from the community. We've gone back and forth about some things. A lot of things have shifted in the scoreboard. Points have shifted. It's become a very, very tight race. I thought it was a foregone conclusion for WCW going into this, but it is. I'm not totally sure what the final score is, but it's just got to be a matter of a point or two determining who the winner is. So I'm excited to. I'm as excited as you guys are to see who's the winner. Who is the hardest promotion of 1997? WWF, WCW, or ECW? The year of 1997, the most volatile, crazy year of wrestling. Arguably, what company among those three was the hardest? Let's find out. All right, folks, who is hardest in 1997? Let's find out. ECW, final score, 17 points. Solid year, a respectable score, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to do it. ECW with 17, WCW with 24 points. It's going to be close. And WWF with 22 points. Therefore, 1997, your hardest promotion of 1997 goes to WCW. My goodness. Guys, give it up for him. Wow. I mean, what a year for 1997. For WCW in 1997, I mean, everybody that contributed Mike Enos, Roadblock, Mortis, Ernie the cat, not Ernie Ladd, who's the cat? Ernest the Cat Miller. Everybody involved that built this company from the ground up. One more time, guys, give it up for us. I thought WWF might overtake them at the last second, but no. By 2 points. WCW has done it. Wow. Anybody else got chills? Anybody else bricked up right now? I know I am. Everybody give it up for being bricked up. All right. Congratulations. I'll keep this confetti going, actually. Fuck it. Congratulations to WCW. Pulling it out there towards the end. Again, I thought WWF might sneak it out there at the end. They were in the lead there for a second, but WCW able to pull it out. Hardest promotion in 1997 goes to Ted Turner, rest in peace. Goes to Eric Bischoff. And wow, what a time. What a time, everybody. I hope you guys have had fun. I know I have. I appreciate everybody submitting their inputs, their rebuttals, their defenses, what have you. It's been a fun time walking through this year, hearing what you guys got to say, and kind of just sitting here chatting about it, kind of going back and forth. What's the best? What's the worst? It's always a great time. This will be coming back for the year of 1998. Who is going to be hardest in 1998? I think I've gotten some ideas from some of the input I've gotten. We might expand some of the categories, kind of playing around with maybe doing like a top 3 situation for them. That might get a little too bulky and whatever, but we'll figure it out. We'll make some changes here. But I think for the most part, we got a pretty good system going. But 1998, I'm excited for it. It's a year that I personally am much more familiar with than 1997. Although there are a few dark spots, particularly ECW and like pre-WrestleMania and a lot of WCW too. I'm excited for Goldberg, dude. I'm excited for the explosion of Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, that whole feud. Kane and Undertaker continuing along, The Rock in his ascension. Man, ton of good stuff in 1998. Another year you could arguably say is the best year in wrestling. And yeah, I'm excited to get to it. And with that, I think that's about all I got for you guys today. It was a bit of a marathon episode, but it deserved it. The year of 1997 was just so robust, so much going on, and it's worth digging deep on it. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you like, rate, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, comment, leave a comment. Do you disagree, agree? Which promotion do you think was hardest in 1997? Which promotion do you think is going to have the hardest 1998? I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear if you have any input on the scoreboard or the point system, any changes you'd like to see. You know, I'm all ears. Folks. But with that, I think that's about all I got for you guys today. I appreciate once again everybody tuning in. I love you. Big smooches all over that face of yours. Mwah. Mwah. I'm hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.